We're doing it live! Fuck it!
Okay. So I think we are on air. Hey, everybody. Sorry that I was a teeny bit late. And now I'm hearing the watch link in the background. So now it's off. Welcome to the Gaytriachy. And we have some guests today who I will announce in a second. But first, I want to explain why I was late, because this is such a silly thing that happened. Okay, so I might have gotten reasonably drunk last night for a prolonged period of time. Like, ultimately, I didn't drink, I probably drank maybe the equivalent of about 8 beers, which isn't that much, like I mean it is a lot for me at this point of my drinking, but I used to drink a lot more than that very regularly. But I drank last night and stayed up to a very late hour in the morning. I don't even want to say how late because I'm kind of embarrassed by it. And what happened was that I somehow, and I mean this is just dumb. So I have this set of headphones that I have on the PlayStation Network, or it's not on the PlayStation Network. They're PlayStation brand headphones, and so they're like really, really. They're kind of like DJ headphones, but even thicker and bigger. Like they totally sort of shut out all of the sound except for what is playing through the video game or movie that you're watching. And I had been watching a movie for a while, and the thing is that I decided, okay, I really need to go to bed. And so I started getting ready to go to bed, and I think I made myself some food because I hadn't eaten in a while, and then I had the food. But over the course of that little thing, I never took off the headphones at all. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to bed or something. And I just laid my head down. I don't know, maybe I just got incredibly tired from eating the food or something. And I sort of fell asleep, but never actually completely fell asleep with the headphones on. And I guess I just lied like that for a number of hours, just with these really heavy, big headphones on my ears. So I couldn't actually sleep. And after like probably 4 hours or so, I was like, wait, why haven't I fallen asleep? I don't think I've actually. And I guess I removed my headphones, but I didn't even know that that was the issue until I finally woke up entirely, and I was like, oh, because I saw them right by where my bed is, and I realized, wait, this must be because I had those on, and it was very uncomfortable, and that's why I didn't really sleep at all. So I had to go, and I ended up falling asleep after I woke up. Like I was supposed to wake up around 3 or so. That's giving a proximate estimation of how late I really stayed up to the early morning light. And then I fell asleep after 3 and woke up at about 3:50, and I was like, oh my god, I really have to actually be prepared for the live stream. I've never been this tired. You can like hear it in my voice, I'm sure. So I took a cold shower to wake myself up, because that actually works to a certain degree. It doesn't work as well as I was hoping maybe it would, but I'm feeling better. And so, hi everybody. This is Gaytriachy for the 23rd of March 2018. No, 2019. And I am going to post the link, and I want everybody who is here to introduce themselves while I am doing that, because I forgot to post the links up.
What's up, fam? It's Space Pan. I'm also tired. I was also out for my friend's birthday, so I got home a little late. But I'm on the upside. At least I didn't fucking fall asleep with headphones on. It's fucking retarded.
That's the most bizarre story. The most bizarre drunk story I've heard.
Yeah, I have like a typical drunk story. Like I was eating Pringles at the bus stop and offering them to people. Like that was that level of drunk, which is at least normal.
Well, I'm Chadwick Moore. I am not hungover today like the two of you are. I had a very productive and nice Saturday morning, so good for me.
Man, hashtag life goals.
That's okay. I was really hungover yesterday, so that's fine.
You're probably wearing a fucking suit right now.
I'm John, and I think reasonably drunk for a prolonged period of time is going to be the name of my memoir.
Excellent.
It's nice
Good,
to be here.
so you're in
today.
the right place. Now, I think you were on our podcast last year, but I don't think I was there. I think it must have been later in the year after I moved to Hong Kong.
It was about 8 months ago or something like that.
Wow, that was
correctly.
Yeah, that was 8 months ago. That was like in August, right?
Yeah, it was right before I moved to Mexico.
Oh, that's funny. We moved around the same time.
Well, it wouldn't be a
Good
gay
to be
themed
back.
podcast if at least 50% of the guests weren't hungover or still drunk. So I think
Yeah, we have not been doing a good enough job representing so far.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, as I remember, John is actually bisexual.
Yes, disclaimer.
Get out! Get out!
Oh, I met one of those.
Don't beat me up.
Yeah, there was actually an ugly rumor propagated by somebody that shall not be named that I am biphobic or something. It's like, no, I just don't like every bisexual guy. I guess that's the best thing to say. But I like John. I thought John was actually really cool when we talked to him before. So I wanted to have him back on. And here he is.
Well, I
What's
think a
not to like
question
about-
that's always haunted me is like, how many dicks do you have to suck before you're officially gay? And I think if you ask a gay guy, you'll get various different answers. But typically, if you ask a straight guy, it's if the answer is more than one, then
Yeah, it's a one drop
kinda,
rule. It's a
I'm
one
kind of
drop
stuck
rule.
into the stuck in between those worlds there.
Yeah.
Wait, does that mean half a dick?
Yeah, I don't
Oh
know
no, you
about
mean
that.
between the straight definition and the
I've done
other.
some freaky
Gotcha.
stuff, but half a dick, I don't think that's never come up.
Someone in the chat said, "Welcome my fave gays and lowlies," and I'm like, "Who the fuck is the lowlies?" Like, I don't understand.
I don't know what that is.
I don't understand. Lowlies are
like a sodomite or something like that. Is that what I mean, or like the
no,
biblical sense?
lowlies means like little girls, and it's like we're not.
Okay. I didn't get the spelling on that one. That's weird.
Yeah, I don't understand. Mitch says me. Maybe that's it. He's the little girl.
It's vaguely creepy.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
Prince, what do you have against bisexual men?
Nothing.
I think you just said you didn't like most of them.
No, no, that's not it. Okay, I think the better way to look at it as I'm really choosy about people that I actually like. It's just rare when I actually, like people well enough to like them, and then even longer than that, it's like, oh, okay, I like this guy, all right. I can hang out with them with other people and at parties or anything, but I don't know if I would ever actually hang out with him just person to person. Like that's a whole different step, and that applies to all people. I mean, like in that same way, I would say I probably don't really like most gay guys, and most. I would say at this point in my life, yeah, but I would say at this point in my life, I've been actually more likely to like straight guys. But I think that's because straight guys have been dealing with the insanity that is women of this decade, influenced by fourth wave feminism. I think that straight guys actually kind of got used to the game. They might not be very good at articulating, why it bothers them exactly. And, admitting that it bothers them because the women around them will probably freak out. But when you can get him, talking relatively alone, like with maybe just you or just another straight guy that he's pretty good friends with, they'll both admit to all the same stuff, and they're like, they're not immune to the female abuse that's been going on so much, but they can certainly at least admit to it a lot better than gay guys. I would say, like, gay guys are like, most of my friends are women. It's like, well, duh. It will always be that way. And so I don't have a lot of patience for gay guys who, love the women at the moment in my life. But most straight guys, they love the women, or they at least want to have relationships with them and have sex with them. But they know that it generally leads to a lot of annoyance, and they can admit that. So I appreciate that about them. Bisexual guys are just pretty rare. It's like you only meet 3 bisexual guys for every 20 gay guys and 67 straight guys or whatever. Or maybe that's not
That's a weirdly specific number.
Yeah, it is weirdly specific, but you just meet very few bisexuals. Like, for every 100 guys you meet, only like 3 of them will be bi, and so the likelihood that I'll like even one of them is sort of low. And there's some people that I don't like who are bi, and okay, the end.
Well, it's kind of strange. I mean, I come from the school of thought that, like, just skin is skin, and whatever it is, just let me jizz on it. And like, I never really did understand. To me, it was always kind of cringeworthy, this kind of prudish class of gay that, they see a vagina and they're like, ew. And it's like, for me, it's just like, whatever, I just do whatever.
We're all pink on the inside, right?
There you go.
Yeah, like, I don't really have a problem with vaginas. I just have a problem with like the rest of what it's attached to.
Yeah.
like the sort of thing where it's like, I think I'm kind of okay with futas, but also kind of okay with like a straight up man that just happens to have a vagina.
Yeah, if I can paraphrase Jedi Mind Tricks, a gangster rap group, I like pussy, but never the bitch that it's attached to. Which is kind of a weird. I've never really seen anything in common between a gangster rap group and a gay man or whatever, because they're quite not that.
There's probably a lot of parallels that they're not going to want to own.
Of course, I think we kind of touched on it last time, how and I think there was another guest either prior or after me that talked about how in the Black community there's like there does seem to be a higher rate of closetedness as opposed like in that whole macho gangster rap thing. There's a huge proportion of them who are like DL, and so like.
Oh yeah, it was a white guest who dated a lot of Black men. And yeah, I was sort of, I remember what I said about it. I don't remember exactly what he said about it, but it is an actual thing where there's Black masculine gay men that you just legitimately would never know were gay at all. And you certainly see them on Grindr a fair amount. There's these guys like DL, and they show a picture of their 6-pack or something, but that's really all. And very, very occasionally do you meet these guys at bars in places like New York and San Francisco, and it's like, oh yeah, I wouldn't be able to tell this guy was gay. Okay.
Well, I think there is a tendency there too within that group to kind of look down on the more femme gays, because of that kind of macho. I don't know what it's about, but it's like, I think that obviously kind of ties into like the greater lack of acceptance, within the Black community for homosexuality in general.
I think of that. Yeah, there's that. And I think that overall, most people find particularly feminine guys annoying. But I've long theorize that it's not so much their feminine behavior that, just there's people who are fairly femme, but aren't hated or don't annoy people in the same way that certain guys do. And I think it usually has to do with self-confidence. I think that a lot of the feminine guys it's very clear that they are insecure, and so they make a joke out of themselves by being just ridiculous all the time, almost to absolve themselves of the responsibility for ever actually being themselves. And most men kind of hate that. Like, most men are like, oh, okay, you're just a clown all the time. That's annoying.
Is that
And
like what the stoicism thing is?
I don't
Like
know.
the concept of stoicism where you like, hold in your who you really are and maintain a like a veneer of manliness at all times.
That's actually ironic because like you'd think that like a super femme gay guy is like the legit like opposite, like 180 degrees opposite of stoicism. But that's kind of a funny way of
Oh,
looking at
yeah, I
it.
see how there's like a kind of a parallel that could be drawn from that. Because, when I was younger, I was very, very insecure around heterosexual males. They made me nervous. I only hung out with girls because, I came out really young. I came out when I was 14, but, by the time I was even 13, everybody thought that I was probably gonna be gay. Like, it wasn't any sort of like great secret. And so, I was very nervous, and a lot of guys actually, it seemed to like guys didn't appreciate that. And I think maybe it's kind of like one of those things when somebody tries too hard to make a joke out of themselves, they come across as nervous. They come across as like putting on a show. And I think that people just are made but uncomfortable by that because it's making them feel like, why can't you just be yourself around me? Are you nervous around me? Nobody likes it when other people are afraid of them, when they realize that. And so eventually I started to have good straight male friends in high school. And I got more and more comfortable around straight males, and especially in college. And I have a definitely pronounced gay accent and everything, but I was also, a genuine person, and they could tell. And then they didn't seem to be bothered by me, even though I did have the gay accent. And so I do really think that it's a lot of that just comes from nervousness and overcompensation because of it, and people pick up on that. Sort of just a theory of mine, but who knows. By the way, if you have not yet smashed the like button, I'd really appreciate it if you did.
Smash it like a pussy that's not attached to a bitch.
I think I have this theory that there's an element of Islamism that has something to do with the black culture's homophobia. Honestly, because there is a higher level of like of Islamic tendencies within black culture, and I mean you look at the way they treat homosexuals over in the Arab world, and it kind of makes sense to me that people like the 5% Nation, the Nation of Gods and Earths, and Islam, which heavily influence black culture, um, that there would be a higher rate of, or a higher lack of acceptance.
Well, there's also, I mean, like straight black men, I've always thought of it as natural conservatives, And there was a whole. I wrote a column about this for the Washington Times about it was when Kevin Hart. Remember they kicked him off of hosting the Oscars for like
Mhm.
a 10-year-old tweet where he said the F word, and I interviewed some people for the column about how like black men really get it the worst from the intersectional crowd, where quote unquote homophobia is concerned. And there's so many examples where they come after athletes and comedians and actors who are straight black men because they made like a gay joke 10 years ago or whatever. I think that same week there was like an 18-year-old who just won the Heisman, and they dug up tweets when he was 14 and started trying to, as he's trying to celebrate the greatest accomplishment of his young life. Suddenly you had all these SJWs calling him homophobic and whatever. Meanwhile, you'd have, I don't know, any like white woman feminists making the same jokes and they get away with it. And not that I don't care. I mean, I think people should be able to make these jokes, but there does seem to be something particularly, they go after the straight black men the most, it seems, because they know there's that homophobia in the community, I guess, and they are trying to tamp it out. I mean, personally, I think it's kind of refreshing if there's a community that's not so super on board with LGBT.
Well, it's in that same vein. I mean, it's kind of funny how you call it like the F word in the same way that blacks call.
No, you can't.
In the same way,
N-word.
like the
You
N-word or
can't
something
say
like that.
Yeah, the
You know,
N-word.
because I hear black
I'll
men
get my-
use the quote unquote N-word more than anyone else, and I hear gays use the F word more than anyone else.
Yeah, I love
I think
the
it's the
F-word.
same identical analog.
I didn't want Prince to get demonetized if I said it, but it's a great word. I use it all the time.
I would probably get a channel strike knowing how they treat me.
Yeah.
I love the F word and the N word. Those are my personal pronouns. When other people use that at me, you have to use the N word.
You know, we've had kind of a victory in the battle over the T word, which unfortunately we can't say because you remember how they still try to make it into, they say it's a hate speech or a slur, but a lot of people
They always say it's a slur.
Like
Yeah,
the
they say
rhyme with granny T word.
It rhymes with granny, yeah, the one that rhymes with granny, or part of a car engine.
And that word was so funny because
it's a great word, and it's a term I've always used that word. It's a term of endearment, you know.
okay, yeah, it was something that every trans person I knew up until about 2013 or so, they all called themselves that. They all called each other that. It was just this common thing that everybody said. And then, like, boom, I don't know how it happened, but like within a week, all of a sudden you could never say it and they would freak out.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it was so sudden. I don't know how, like if there's like a Borg, signal transmitted to all of their to their brains. I don't know. Maybe they put something in the hormones that they all take or something.
It was a new line of code for the NPCs that was uploaded.
Yeah, it
Worst
was.
patch ever.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was so weird.
And like, it even sounds cute. Anything
It is cute.
It sounds cute. Yeah. Man, I just can't wait for the future when like I'm talking to a black person and I'm like, remember when we couldn't say the N-word for like 200 years because people would freak out, and then like black people are embarrassed about it. Like, oh yeah, I know, I'm sorry. Like,
well, I mean, there was like a 15 or so year period when it wasn't okay. During the height of the PC 90s craze, like when you couldn't say black, like you couldn't.
Oh yeah,
black person.
Which
and
is
now
super
it's
annoying.
like black people no black person I know says African American.
African American is the stupidest term I've always
said. So dumb.
It's like that Rainbow Coalition bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because how am I supposed to know if a black person is like from like Africa and also American? That's too hard. That's too many steps.
Right.
And there would also be a lot of confusion based around like what country. I mean, that's such a broad term technically. Like if you're trying to be clinical, it's like, well, yeah, where there's so many countries in Africa. It actually reminds me of a funny time with my sister when I was a kid. I think I was these friends that I had, because I had these friends when I was really little that were Chinese, and they were brothers. Their father was actually from Hong Kong and their mother was Asian too. I'm not sure if she was born in America or not. And so the thing is, in Seattle, where I was growing up, there's a lot of Asian people, just all different types of Asian people. But I would say more than anything at the time, there was a lot of Japanese people that you would come into contact with. I guess they had sort of integrated first. And so I remember maybe telling my mother or something like, yeah, I have this new friend and he's Chinese. And my mom and my sister, being 2 years older than I, so she was probably like 8 or so. She was like, Japanese. But he wasn't. He was Chinese. And I think that she was saying that because she legitimately thought that all Asian people, despite what they tell you, are not Chinese. They're all Japanese, because we had mostly known Japanese people. It was this very strange little slight, you know, and I don't blame my sister for doing that or anything. I'm not using this to make fun of her, but it's odd the way people start, once you start grouping people together by their skin color and, you know, the ancestral homeland, that opens you up to such a so like Africa is the ancestral homeland, but at least that's broad enough, you know. But most people prefer to be stated like, you know, like Nigerian American. You can hear that occasionally. It's so much better though to just call people black, because it's like, well, what if they're from Jamaica? I mean, that would still technically be Africa. Blah 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 blah.
Well,
No,
it's funny you mentioned that. Like, I'm from San Antonio, Texas, and for a year I worked in a Vietnam market. And there's not that, you know, there's not that many here, although we do have a weird Vietnamese population here. But but people of all like different ethnicities and immigrants would come in, and a lot of Africans would come in, and they're like dicks, dude. Like they're dicks to black people here in America, because like they come over here and you know, they come from like war zones and shit, and they come over here and they see black people, you know, living in like the richest country on earth and acting like mad N-wordish, I guess, if I can coin a new word, and like and yet still occupying like low income brackets and just acting kind of the fool, and like, but they're very conservative themselves, you know, they're very, you know, upright and prim and proper and stuff like that. And they look at black people here in America and they're like, what the hell is going on, guys? Like, why are you representing yourselves in this way? You know, because they have a much more upright kind of attitude, you know, as far as like moral things go.
Well, that's interesting too. If you look at affirmative action policies, especially at elite universities like Harvard, this has been studied at Harvard and Yale and a couple other places, which are explicitly meant to benefit the descendants of slaves, right? Like African American, because the reasoning goes, whatever, they've been victims of systemic racism or whatever. And those universities overwhelmingly fill their affirmative action quotas with African immigrants or children of African immigrants who don't have the and it totally, I mean, there's like huge
They
numbers
consistently outperform blacks here in America.
Right, yeah. And so it totally defeats the purpose of the intention of affirmative action being to help this class of people native to this country, just because they just, you know, check off the skin color quota. And that's that. It's the most hypocritical thing imaginable. I think it's like the African American, I think at Harvard, I wrote about this once. I can't remember all the data, but the numbers are shot, like surprisingly huge. And there's even like the chair of the African American Studies department at Harvard is like an immigrant from Nigeria or something. So it's like, yeah, that's but they do, especially Nigerians they tend to do extremely well in America when they immigrate here and tend to vote Republican.
Interesting.
Yeah, that actually came up, I
that
think,
whole
a few
thing with
years ago.
Democrats, why they favored immigration typically was because immigrants overwhelmingly vote Democrat.
Yeah, well, not all of them. I mean, that's
yeah.
They're not so keen on Cuban or Nigerian immigration, maybe.
Well, I think that Democrats favor voting from people that are coming over at least illegally. I mean, and that sounds really like painting with a wide brush, but I think that largely it has to do with this notion that if somebody has the wherewithal and the tenacity to actually move across the ocean and start a new life, probably once they start thinking about things and they hear what, because you know, they don't understand American politics when they're in their home country, it would be really, really hard to learn about it. And because they don't even know how American society works. And then they get here, they worked really, really hard. And the Republican Party will probably sound a lot more appealing to them, just as a basic rule. And so, you know, if somebody comes, you know, from south of the border, or I don't know where else, like from China or something, where they can move into a Chinatown and not entirely immigrate or integrate. and also there's a lot of Chinese politicians. It could be easy enough to, sort of slip into the vote Democrat line of thinking. But if you're entirely on your own and you move across the ocean and make a life for yourself, you read what the politicians are saying, and it's like, oh, I think I like the Republican guy. It's all about hard work and, getting rewarded for your hard work. I like that,
Well, if you're typically, if you're black and, profess conservative values or vote Republican, you're seen as an Uncle Tom. I think Candace Owens, she described it as like they revoke your black card or some, some kind of crazy crap. And that's something that I've never really understood, is this weird alliance, or the weird alliance between the black community and the Democrats, especially given that my understanding is that they were originally the ones who started the KKK, like they seem to be
But
kind of
don't
using
you
the black
know?
demographic.
Well, but
Yeah,
even
but
I think
they always say there was a switch, right? Anytime you mention anything in the Democrats' history, no, there's the great switch. It's like, when did this happen? It seems like this has happened, I guess, multiple times for your narrative to work.
yeah, the party flip is an absolute myth. I mean, you can like go through and break it down how it's a total myth. The South didn't even start voting Republican in a block until like 20 years after the Civil Rights Act. So that's, but I mean, I think Prince, you and I have talked about this before, that I'm not so sure that I think like the activist blacks, like the SJW blacks who probably grew up in really nice communities and went to expensive schools, are totally different from like if you're just talking to like somebody from the ghetto, like here in Brooklyn.
Oh yeah, they are.
They get it more. Like they might not vote Republican, but they don't think, like, they get it. They're much easier and open-minded.
Oh, totally.
They're open-minded to talk to about these things, and they sort of understand why people would vote Republican.
Yeah, I think so too.
That's always been my experience in New York City.
Yeah, no, one of the things that I've noticed is that the black people who are SJWs, they only know other black people who are SJWs, which there's not really that many of, and they would like all know each other. And then, they know a bunch of white people and Asian people and Latinx people, stuff like that,
It's Latinx. It's Latinx, bigot. Latinx.
But no, and then they I don't think that they get along with like, quote unquote real black people. Black people that aren't trying to like be all I don't know why this came to mind. My friend and I had we had a hypothetical rap group name, and we called it Objective Perspective. And it was like, we are positive, we are going to represent the black community well. And it was kind of like I guess, making fun of hip hop groups like Arrested Development, if you remember that from the 90s. They had a good song called Tennessee. Tennessee's a good song, but they had Everyday People, which was a bad song. Like, it was really stupid.
Didn't they do Mr. Wendell?
Oh, that was kind of a good song, actually. Yeah,
I do like that song. It's a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, it's a very silly song. Like the lyrics are very silly, but the way that they did the chorus with the singing that sounds like it's somehow digitalized in some weird 90s way or something. It's very catchy. It's very catchy. So yeah, like when the people seem like they'd be in Arrested Development or something, I don't think that those people really get along with most black people. Most black people
I think the black community has been kind of thrown into a funk, with the whole Donald Trump thing, because prior to Donald Trump's election, like, black people actually liked Donald Trump because he was like, in the parlance of our times, he's like gangsta rap. Wu-Tang is always rapping about Donald Trump. Like, Donald Trump, is always like appearing with rappers and stuff. And I just thought that was kind of interesting. And he's always talking about, like now, about how black unemployment is at its lowest rate in 30 years. And as the years have gone by since his presidency started, I'm hearing less and less complaints about him from the black community.
I'm sure there's like a segment of Black MAGA that just supports Trump because it pisses off white people, like the whitest among white people. It reminds me though, like we were talking a little bit about this last week, about how a lot of people within like the SJW crowd, like especially for like male feminists, it's like they can't relate to females, so they just follow a script. And a lot of these like white SJWs, they don't have any black friends, so they feel like if they can follow the script, then they're cool. And I wonder if like among like black SJWs, it's more of like the Candace Owen black, where like it's like, yeah, you're technically black, but like you're like, no, you're not, like 0%. Like,
There's like a
You mean
weird
like
reversal
Obama?
of slavery going on there,
Yeah,
where like
right?
the white SJWs prostrate themselves before the black SJWs and just are content to be constantly whipped. Like they'll never gain acceptance. They think they will if they, lay down at the feet of black SJWs, but it's never going to happen. I mean, they're never going to be part of the demographic, and they'll always be seen as outsiders. And
Well,
Yeah, like
but
remember when they
wait.
acted like dogs like a couple of weeks ago?
Jesus
What
Christ.
better image do you need of that? You know what I mean?
well, but here's the thing.
Let's be
I
honest.
don't-
Which president is more culturally black, Barack Obama or Donald Trump?
Well, yeah,
I'd have to say Donald Trump, honestly.
Yeah,
Donald Trump
And
is more
I hear nothing
culturally
but
black.
complaints about Obama from black people because he delivered on none of his campaign promises, especially to black people. It's
Right.
like he didn't do anything that he said he was going to do. He didn't help black people in any way, and that's kind of what the election was riding on, in my opinion. I mean, it was
he
this
made
idea
everything
that-
worse. Like
Yeah,
really
he was
dramatically
elected-
worse.
He was elected to unite. I mean, if you remember his race speech from Philadelphia during the campaign, it was just this incredibly moving speech about a very honest look at race relations in America and not pointing any fingers. And then what's he do by his second term? He becomes the most racially divisive president, in living memory, probably.
Well,
Yeah,
he's
it's 'cause
responsible for more deaths of colored people worldwide than the police on any given year of his presidency, especially after he started 2 wars.
Right.
I mean, he's actually a warmonger, and like he didn't close Guantanamo Bay like he said he was going to do. He didn't do a goddamn thing for black people.
Yeah,
I think
and
a lot of people are
he-
pissed off about that. And yet he still got the Nobel Peace Prize, which I still don't understand why.
Yeah, and he always remember he bailed out the big banks and taxpayers had to pay for it, which
Yeah, he doubled the debt
that's-
that Bush Jr. started.
yeah, and that's more that does not help the black community at all. And so I think that I've always said that I think that his actions starting in his second term were basically based around him trying to distract everybody, because if people weren't distracted, they'd realize that he was a really horrible president, and that was clear already by 2012.
Yeah.
Could it be reasonably projected that if Trump gains a second term, that he'll just, throw his dick in the wind and just like start doing whatever fucked up shit he wants?
I'm worried about that just because I feel like we would be naive to not be worried about that for any
Like the
president.
first half was the restrained part, like that kind of.
What's he gonna? What would he want to do? I mean, what?
I don't know.
I'm the opposite of worried about that. I feel like that's on his side, because like honestly, the best thing that's come of Trump has been just like his Twitter and everyone freaking out over it, and like him calling the media fake news to their face, and and like banning Jim Acosta and shit. Like honestly, that's like on my top tier of like things Trump has accomplished.
Now, fake news is one of the best. You remember the term fake news came from the fake news
from Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, I love it.
They were trying to they really thought they had independent media, their boot on independent media as soon as they started labeling them fake news, and then boy did that backfire in their faces.
Yeah,
he's like, I'm taking this. I'm taking this.
Like you're the fake news, and now it's like it's the greatest, one of the greatest cultural products to come out of the Trump presidency is that term.
Yeah, well, and now the only thing that the Democrats have left to attack, people who aren't Democrats with by trying to say that their information isn't true. They accuse you of alternative facts, which very few people probably even know what that means or where it came from. Aside from that, I guess Kellyanne Conway said it.
Right? Yeah.
But if you actually think about it, there is such things as alternative facts. Like you're trying to spin a narrative and then you say, now I guess
isn't an alternative fact just pretty much a difference of opinion?
I don't entirely understand what it means. The Democrats acted like her saying that must have been a completely absurd thing that is just her coming up with a way to describe things that are untrue. But I was never convinced that that was the case. I was never convinced that she said something that was entirely untrue and that you should therefore dismiss anything that you could even pragmatically label as an alternative fact. You know, like when I'm on Facebook and I actually, no, this was under a video comment of mine. This was so annoying. I had one of those like weird gaslighting trolls that pretended to be a fan of my channel, and then it turned out that secretly they're like some sort of far left communist type person. The thing was they found my video about slavery and genocide. It was called America was built upon slavery and genocide debunked. And it's actually not that great of a video. I think it seems like a pretty good video if you vaguely know the information, but I didn't actually present it all that well because I went back and I watched it and I saw it was a problem. But
I like that video.
Okay, well, thanks. But the thing is that, one of my big points about whether or not the United States was built on slavery was I was like, it's actually not true. We had less slaves in the United States shipped to the United States area than essentially any nation in North America or in the Americas. Like all of Brazil and those places had a massive amount more of slaves, and even just the island of Cuba had more than twice the amount.
Brazil, Cuba, and Hispaniola.
Yeah, they all had way more slaves shipped to them. Like even just the island of Cuba had more than twice the amount of.
That's why Brazil has the high.
What's up?
Sounds like your mic fell down a hole.
I tweeted about this week, and it caught the attention of some left-wing academic with a huge following. And oh my God, the white liberals were out in droves for trying to ratio me for 3 days. It was the most hilarious thing to watch.
Okay, well, so the thing that happened with the conversation was I was like, he said that's not a valid point. I mean, we still had it's not a valid point to say that. Well, yeah, we had slaves, but other people had it worse. And why is that a point? Blah, blah. And it's like, I think that it's a pretty valid point to bring up. I don't know what to say because you don't hear people talking about Cuba was built on the foundation of slavery. You just don't hear that.
Well, the implication is that they're going to come around and we're going to hold the Muslims and the Cubans accountable later. Okay. Stop with your whataboutism. We're totally going to get around to that later.
Or something. I don't know. I don't even think that I've never even heard them have the mental wherewithal to think of that as a comeback. It's really just like, what does that mean? That we should pretend that America has been totally perfect all throughout history? And it's like, no one's saying that. It's just proportionally.
Well, giving them the benefit of the doubt that America was founded upon principles of bigotry or whatever crap. There's still a disconnect between this fundamentally flawed idea that you can hold people's ancestors accountable for the fuck ups of their parents. I've yet to get a proper explanation as to how that makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, it's an original sin argument. And honestly, that's the best way to put it is when you tell them that's an original sin argument. A lot of them really, really don't like that.
They freeze up.
Oh yeah, you're right.
But okay, so I was saying a point though about that story, which is that what I did right there could be class now, and I don't remember if this guy said this. I might have just realized this myself. But what I did right there by adding perspective to the narrative, the narrative is that the United States is actually the worst nation on earth. And it's like, well, technically not at all. But what I did there could be described as alternative facts. I provided some alternative facts to give people a more balanced and nuanced impression of what we're actually talking about. And the idea that somebody could say, oh, he just acted like Kellyanne Conway, he must be a crackpot, that's so silly. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's it. Well, and I think everyone knows that's exactly what she was referring to when she made that comment, was just as you described it. Okay, here's your facts you're putting at me. Here are some other facts for people to consider that are an alternative to the ones that you've curated and selected to fit your agenda.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that was such a hilarious moment to the left, because when she brought up these like things that were alternative facts, they had never heard them before, so they just assumed she was just making stuff up. But
Oh,
of
yeah.
course, she's probably telling the truth.
Well,
That's
and
what they are,
they know what she meant by the comment. They're being, you know what I mean? There's not like a legitimate point behind it. It's just like they had a meme once, so they got really excited about it.
They know it, but their audience didn't know it. You know, like their audience didn't know what she meant by it, because they don't. I mean, Democratic politicians, left-leaning journalists are evil people, but they're not as stupid as they act. But their audience is that stupid, and so that's how things like that can take off.
I think many of the
I think
journalists
the way
are that
the way
stupid.
the left wing has popularized their version of alternative facts is emblematic of like postmodernism itself, because it leaves you with no real ground to stand on. It makes it makes everything more relative.
And that's like the huge irony about it, right? Because what they're trying to mock is this idea that it's like, oh, you're saying that just because you have a different perspective, you have a totally different alternative set of facts. And it's like, dude, that's like entirely your fucking thing. Like,
Yeah,
it's like they're always like 1 degree away from just complete like amnesia.
oh, exactly. But I think Brent is right that I mean, just anyone who's spent a lot of time on the left knows that they are so smug. They're so smug, and they've never ever heard 90% of anti-left or conservative or right-wing talking points or these alternative facts like about slavery in the United States, etc. They've just never heard these things.
Yeah.
And so when they hear them, they don't even think, oh, that's interesting, I should look into it, which is sort of what started my journey away from them. Was I actually did think, I've never heard that. I want to know, is that true or not? I want to learn about this. They don't. They just laugh and be like, oh my God, he's so stupid. He doesn't even know that America is built on slavery and it's racist from the beginning. Like, what an idiot.
Yeah, it's
know?
like, did he ever pay attention in school?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what gender studies course was he taking?
Yeah.
It
It's
just
so
reminds me of like when the fucking, remember the Michelle Field shit with Cory Booker? How people were just like, oh my God.
No,
And like,
what was that?
oh my God, that was way back. I think it was actually during the Trump campaign.
Oh, Cory,
and
by the
like,
way, who has a beard now. Have you noticed that? His beard girlfriend? Anyway, go ahead, Spaceman.
I was just saying, like, so Michelle Field's this reporter, and like they were basically trying to like bum rush at Trump, and like in an area they're not supposed to be in, and Cory Booker just like held his arm out, and then they made this big thing of like, look at how he grabbed her arm, like they basically did her, and there was like white knighting for her, and she was like gonna write a book about it and everything, and I'm just like, that bitch was wearing heels. That bitch was wearing heels, and she did not fall over it. I made like my version of the Legally Blonde argument.
Wait, Cory Booker or Corey Lewandowski?
Oh, I'm sorry, that was Corey Lewandowski.
Lewandowski, yeah.
My Corey's mixed up. It's like the worst name. But yeah, and I'm like so pissed because I totally called that shit, that it was all bullshit, and like it all came out that it was bullshit, and she fucked off, and like I'm just like so angry that none of that haven't like gone to this leftist and just like fucking put their nose in the shit. Like, see, like,
well, some of my favorite.
Can I ask a question of the group now that Cory Booker has come up?
Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering how you guys as gay men feel about Cory Booker's policy positions, and if that at all conflicts with this story that he grabbed someone's dick in a bathroom.
Wait, I don't
I'm
even
not
know.
up today. I don't even know what's going on.
Everyone I know who's
no, you heard about it? Apparently he had like a homosexual encounter with somebody in a bathroom, and that's being used against him.
Well, it's sort of
Weird.
chopped off. That was so Harmeet Dillon, who's if you guys aren't following her, you should. She's a First Amendment lawyer who's wonderful and lovely. She was representing the guy that was claiming the sexual assault. So I guess Cory Booker had been invited to speak to some LGBT group in community center in New Jersey, and then afterwards he cornered one of the guys in the bathroom and like forced him to suck his dick or something. But the guy wouldn't make his name public. I actually I talked to Harmeet about it because I wanted to know more. This is a while ago, and she was basically like, you know, it kind of went away because I think the guy got scared that he didn't want he would eventually have to come public with his name and didn't want his reputation ruined and to come under the get the Democratic Party nuclear arsenal aimed at him. But I have a feeling that it could pop up again. But everyone I know who's from New Jersey and in politics is like, we've known Cory Booker is gay forever since he entered politics, and now he's got this like he's dating he's allegedly dating some actress and they're madly in love. Did you guys see that? Was that this week or last week?
God, I am so not up to date. This is
That's what it is. So it's Rosanna Dario or some I don't know, some actress. It's such a beard. It's a total fake. But with his policies, what's he do? What are his policies? I don't even like what he sponsored that stupid anti-lynching bill, and maybe he's now against some stupid equality act. Like none of this shit makes any sense, or it's completely useless legislation just meant to virtue signal.
Well, I believe up until that scandal, he was being touted as a possible candidate, for 2020.
Well, he's running.
That kind of Cory Booker.
Yeah, that's why he had to get a fake girlfriend because he's running.
Oh my
so
God,
he is going to run.
Yeah, he is running. Yeah, he announced it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, he's not gonna
happen.
It's not gonna happen, but
not gonna happen. No, and there's so many candidates already, and none of them really stand out in a significant way. None of them really are.
Well,
Elizabeth Warren is incredibly unpopular because of that Native American bullshit.
Well, and she does actually a number of things. Like if you actually look at the things that she says for a prolonged period of time, like I think that she was saying she supports reparations. Am I getting that wrong?
Dude, no. Recently, she said she was going to like prosecute everyone for white supremacy, and I'm like, damn.
Yeah, she's a wacko.
Accelerationist candidate. Like I'm like shit. Should I go Elizabeth Warren 2020? So I want to fucking nuke everything. Like shit, it'd be great.
She had to pay reparations to Native American students whose scholarship she stole.
Yeah,
that would be the first step, wouldn't it?
Sean King style. Mm-hmm. Like I don't want it to be too schadenfreude, sour grapes, but I am getting immense pleasure from watching the Democratic Party like rip itself apart. With their ridiculous, clownish candidates.
Well, I don't know. Maybe they have some master plan or something. Like maybe they know who they want their nominee to be, and it's going to be like Kamala Hairspray, and but they're trying to put a bunch of decoys out there, But it was funny. I was watching a bit of a Beto speech, because I don't know if I don't know if I follow him on Twitter, but I was I saw an ad, I think, and it was like Beto is speaking live somewhere, and I turned it on for probably about 4 minutes just because I had never heard him actually talk at that time. This was before the infamous video with his wife where she doesn't say a single thing that came out like a few days ago that they even mocked on the Tonight Show.
Good. I don't give a fuck what she thinks.
Well, so the thing that he said that I like, as soon as he said it, I was like, okay, I don't need to watch anymore. He was like, and I want to make it very clear that if no matter what, this time around, the Democrats have to support the nominee, no matter who she or he is. And it was like, okay. So you just admitted that you aren't gonna be it. Is what I think just happened.
It's like he lost to an alien. He lost to alien in human costume Ted Cruz, and like, he's a loser already. I don't know what the fuck he's doing running for president. Like,
he just backed down. He just backed down because he want to get murdered.
I think everyone who's running right now is running for vice president. I don't think any of them are running for president.
And then the vice president under Obama is running too, apparently.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the party wants Joe Biden, so the party will pick whoever the party wants, and it'll probably be someone like Biden, and then everyone else. Now we have a list of 20 potential vice presidents, and we'll probably have to have a Beto.
Who do you think it'll be?
I've been thinking Kamala Harris, but
wait, has Biden actually announced?
No, I don't think he's actually announced.
Oh,
he keeps. Oh no, did he?
I think he did.
I think maybe he did not too long ago. I think maybe he did.
Hold on, let me look it up.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to remember, like, Trump.
it could be Beto, but Beto's a fake Latino, so that doesn't work because there's too many.
And then also, there's another Texan from San Antonio, as a matter of fact, who's running for president. He was the mayor of San Antonio here, and I can't even remember his fucking name. But he has like a twin brother, and there's this really weird scandal where he and his twin were interchanging roles, like they were standing in for one another at public events.
Oh,
Oh my god, that's awesome.
Wow.
That's really fucking weird.
That's based in Red Pilled. I endorse him, whoever
Oh, it
he
was
is.
Julian Castro is his name.
And his
He was the
twin.
mayor some years ago, but he hasn't been in politics for a minute, so I don't know
want
why
twins
he's running either.
presidents. I want twins as presidents and vice president. That's smart.
So Joe Biden has not officially announced his candidacy, but there's lots of rumors, and there was one time where supposedly he accidentally slipped his tongue and said something alluding to running for president, and then kind of like maybe interrupted himself. I didn't read the full article or watch the clip, so I don't exactly know. So everybody kind of thinks that he is, but he hasn't.
Everybody's forgetting like how freaking early it is. Like Trump announced his run for presidency in like what, July of 2015, right?
October.
Well, for
Or
some
it's
reason,
even
there are
later.
several outlets
Yeah,
reporting that
I think I'm wrong.
Joe Biden is
Launch
running.
it. Sorry, what?
Apparently, there are several outlets reporting that Joe Biden is running. Although I don't know if he's made a formal declaration, but I mean, I think he's going to run.
See, that's the smart way to announce it, is to like secretly announce it. So there's a lot of like rumor, and it's all unconfirmed, and then you're all like quiet about it, and like do that for like a few months, you know, and then announce it. Like so many of them.
I think he's probably got
got
the strongest level of support, at least in the Democratic Party.
which is pathetic.
Yeah, it's so pathetic because he's so what's
So
the
fucking
word?
creepy.
Creepy Uncle
he's,
Joe.
he's creepy, and he's also cringy. Like that time that he basically said that he would take Donald Trump outside and beat him up or whatever.
Yeah.
It was the
They're
most
so old.
It was
Like,
the
imagine
most
their flesh
cringy-
flapping together, and the sweat is just be ridiculous.
It's like some old man that would like threaten a 8-year-old kid for riding his bike on his lawn or something, like, kid, I was in Nam. Like,
Well, Biden,
Oh, God.
the last poll I saw, Biden is leading with black voters, which is interesting. But he's got not a great history. Like he said, like he called Obama, I think before he was
yeah,
Obama's running mate, he called Obama the most, quote, clean and articulate black man in public life. Something like that. Like,
Now, there is a gay candidate. You realize that, right?
yeah,
There is an openly
guy.
gay Democratic candidate running for president.
yeah, Butt Guy or whatever his name is.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
that guy. Yeah, people are saying they like him a lot. I haven't actually taken a listen, but I think that is going to go very awkwardly. Like, he's another person that I would kind of like to have debating Trump, because I feel like Trump actually secretly knows a lot about the gays. People don't really know that, but if you look into all of his different things, it's like, wait, I think that he actually knows gay men pretty well. And
Yeah, he's all up
Yeah.
in Hollywood.
yeah, and so I think that when this guy starts trying to maybe bring the hard questions to Trump, I think that he's going to be slightly unprepared, or the audience will be unprepared for what happens when Trump reacts. And I think also, it would be possible, I don't know if this will happen, but it could be possible that Trump could turn that identity politic card away from the Democrats and be like, oh,
Puts me on edge.
do you legitimately think the supporters of the Democratic Party are actually just going to fall over themselves to support a white cis gay man? Because they haven't said anything good about gay men in like 7 years or so, or maybe 5, but it's been a while since the Democrats actually weren't endlessly trash talking white gay men, and that's exactly what you are. It would be so easy to turn that against him.
The fact that he's opening with like the identitarian politics, I think is a bad sign.
Yeah. Well, he's
Yeah.
completely milquetoast and boring. I don't know why I don't think he has a chance in hell. But
I don't think he's a serious candidate. I think similar
Yeah, I
to
don't think he is either.
Beto, it's sort of a test run for
Gravel,
I think it's a test run for 2024. I think I think they want to know, do people respond well to a gay candidate? Do people respond well to a handsome candidate? You know, like all these little things. But I think that they are sort of putting on everything on the wall, throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, is what makes sense
I
to
was
me.
watching The View yesterday, and don't ask me why. It was fucking on, and like I fucking hate that show. A gaggle of hens or geese or whatever and shit. But like they were talking about Joe Biden and his running mate, who is a black woman. I forget what her name is, but Stacey something.
Oh,
something
Stacey Abrams,
Abrams.
the one who
But
made
they were
up the
talking
most.
about him stepping down after 4 years and just handing her the presidency.
Oh my
And apparently
god.
they're saying like he has already professed that like he would do that and things of that nature, and it's like he's not even the nominee yet.
Another
They're
loser
already
who
kind of
couldn't
trying to
even.
weirdly prep this black woman who nobody fucking knows, and nobody even knows her policy positions or who she is or anything. And it's like
There's
Well, okay.
something really
that strikes me as
symbolically
odd.
like perfect.
And also
about-
lost her own race. So another loser like Beto who didn't win.
Can
Yeah.
you imagine though that
Yeah.
being how like the first woman president becomes
With this
elected is
cringy,
because like
weird
someone else
fucking
wins?
skateboarding shit. I don't know what he's thinking, dude. I don't know what Beto O'Rourke is thinking coming out on stage on a fucking skateboard like he's gonna capture the youth vote that way in fucking Texas. Like, how retarded do you have to be?
And did you see the Vanity Fair photo shoot? It looked like a fucking Cialis ad.
Yeah, like it's just like I don't.
With the sad dog in every picture.
It's very confusing. It's very confusing. Like it's like they don't. Do you guys not look at yourselves in the third person when you're running for an office or something? Like, do you not have any perception of what
can
you
no-
look like or how you sound?
Can no one talk about the fact that he darkens his skin? Not only does he have a fake Latino name, but he darkens his skin, and no one ever mentions it.
Like wasn't it Romney style where he did like the Mexican face or whatever?
Yeah, that's what he does because he's got the fake Mexican name and he darkens his skin to make people think he's Mexican, I guess.
Yeah, his
I
name
wish
was like
that, like, the
Robert.
Democratic-
He's like he's like a white guy or something.
Who, by the way, he's Irish, and I don't think I saw him wishing a happy St. Patrick's Day, but I guarantee he will Cinco de Mayo.
Oh god.
I'm gonna follow up on that, and I'm gonna see if he wished a St. Patrick's Day, and then I'm gonna see what he does on Cinco de Mayo.
See, because I just watch these presidential elections like it's a reality TV show with like eliminations and stuff, and like the 2008 election was super fun to watch on like the Republican side of it, and then in
Wouldn't it be like
2016,
The
it was fun to
Apprentice?
watch. Yeah, right. It's literally gonna be The Apprentice. We get to see that's he's just been building up to the greatest season of The Apprentice ever. But like,
So
I'm really sad because like the Democratic like left wing media is really highly critical of all of the Republicans. So like any little gap, any little thing would just get totally like as much entertainment out of it as you could possibly get. You would get, but they're not gonna do that to the Democrats. And I wish that I could like have my cake and eat it too, where like all these Democrats get that level of scrutiny because like they deserve it, and it'd be really funny. At least they're characters. At least they have some characters besides fucking Biden.
Yeah,
I think the one thing that the main thing that the Democrats have going against them is the internet.
I don't know. That's a
The-
problem. They gotta
What's
shut
that
that
mean?
down. They gotta shut that down.
Well,
Yeah,
and that's
well, they've been
exactly what they're
trying.
going to do, just like they did right before the midterms.
I just love how like Beto did to himself what those black chicks did to Bernie Sanders. Like he literally just like did that to himself in like so many ways.
Wait, how?
But look at how they also. So the media will take down the Democrat candidates that the establishment doesn't like because they started immediately doing that with Tulsi Gabbard. It was like hit piece after hit piece after hit piece.
Oh yeah, they paid
And she-
they paid David Duke to endorse her.
Yeah.
Right, okay, that is a conspiracy theory.
That
I'm
is a
just
conspiracy theory, but I
joking.
would not be surprised.
No,
that
it's
he did endorse her.
amazing. It's always such a big deal when David
Well,
Duke endorses
well-
a candidate.
Yeah.
What were his reasons? What were his reasons for endorsing her?
Because he also is now said that he's come out in support of Ilhan Omar and saying she's the most important member of Congress. Yeah, with him, I think it's Jew hatred for both of them. So I don't think Tulsi Gabbard is an anti-Semite, but I think she's a big supporter of. I think I could be wrong, but I think she's a big supporter of defunding Israel. Omar is obviously a Jew hater, so I think that's where Duke comes in. I think it's the Jewish question for him is what where he allowed to support. And obviously, President Trump is a massive supporter of Israel, the Jewish people.
I
So I
think
think
it's
that's
the
what-
Jewish question as well as like the BDS movement that's becoming a really huge wedge issue for people in the left wing. I don't think they really know how to deal with it, and I think that was evidenced with their whole confrontation of Chelsea Clinton after her comments about Ilhan Omar.
Right. Yeah.
Like I don't think they know what. I don't think they actually know how to handle that particular issue.
Yeah, I remember it was like maybe a year or two ago. I was talking to someone. Somebody had sent me a news story about some anti-Semitic remarks from the British Labour Party or something. And I remember I said like, well, they're all like the left is all anti-Semites. The American left just hides it. I mean, and I said I guarantee they're gonna follow suit of the British left, and they're like before you know it, you're gonna see blatant anti-Semitism on the left. And here we are.
This just
Well, I
reminds
mean,
me
you
of
know,
on our
when you
earlier.
compare like black culture, you know, it's kind of like I don't understand what really constitutes anti-Semitism anymore. I mean, if you talk strictly about the demographics and the statistics of like Jews in America, then for some reason that constitutes anti-Semitism somehow.
I think it's just a little bit more of like there's such
But like
a
Jews are doing great. Jews are doing just fine. I don't really
but
understand.
there's
You
so
can't
many okay.
even
But
insult
that's why the
them.
left doesn't like them, because they can't really put them in the oppressed people's class anymore, because they're great capitalists. And
Yeah, well, and because the left is, basically, like the Venn diagram of Islam and the left, it's basically almost entirely overlapping in terms of their values,
right.
and so I think that that's a fair amount having to do with it. What I would say is this: there's so many bad things that you hear about Jewish people from leftists. You know, the privilege thing you hear a lot, and
Are we talking
just
about Jewish or like Israelis?
no Jewish. Just I hear a lot of and Jewish people have started to notice like they say that Jewish people like frequently get attacked on university campuses in almost the same way as conservatives do, supposedly, and I don't
I
really
honestly
know.
don't believe that.
Okay, maybe yeah, Jewish people do have a tendency to amplify the loudness of their own plight definitely quite a lot, and they're also very paranoid. I think that there's a ancestral activation of and I'm a quarter Jewish. I like to think I get it. And so
I don't know what that means, but yeah.
and I'm uncut. I'm an uncut quarter
Okay,
Jew.
well I know what that means.
Are you now?
Yeah.
It's just I get the feeling like Jews try to coast on the Holocaust sympathy in the same way that blacks try to coast
No,
on
I
the
think
slavery
okay.
sympathy, you know.
And
Like I think they're both incorrect. You know, although two are in the two are in clearly different demographic classes at this point.
Okay, I do believe that there is this, kind of like,
Like the black nationalists, they hate Jews. They hate Jews. I mean,
yeah, okay, yeah. No,
they
they're
like Farrakhan is straight up anti-Semite, and that's something that was a wedge, a further wedge between the liberals, earlier this year, I believe.
But they're going to pick, like they have with the gays, they're going to pick Islam. So they're going to pick Islam over gays and Islam over Jews.
Yeah, they always will. They always will.
Islam has the authoritarian structure in place and the global numbers to help bring in the socialist utopia.
Well, okay, what
in like Libya, they don't want to wear those fucking hijabs. Over here, you have left-wing women activists, wearing American flag hijabs, as a statement of protest, and I don't fucking get it.
Oh my god, did you guys
gay
see
people off of rooftops?
Trick the New Zealand Prime Minister wearing like the hijab?
Oh my god, yes.
I can't believe that shit.
And then all these New Zealand female news anchors did the same thing, but which is so funny. If you look at the pictures, they do like white girl hijab, so it covers like just like the very back of their head, which kind of defeats the point. It's like basically like a sexy nun costume. They're like, I'm wearing a hijab, and it's like, a piece of cloth just over like the very back of their head.
I think it's emblematic of a very severe psychosis that's going on in the left wing. Like they're fracturing in a way that is very unhealthy, and I don't think it's going to turn out well for them in 2020. unless they really like change their act together and like really like smart up. I don't.
Well, I
I don't.
think
I
that the
don't
problem is, I think that there's a very specific problem that's going on with the left. The left, especially ever since Barack Obama, he was, I think, really quite literally the most economically incompetent president that we've, had certainly since World War II. Like, there's no great way of saying anything otherwise. He
Is
just,
that fair to say, given that he, given the economic
yeah, he did
pressures that he was
everything.
under?
He did everything to make it worse.
Heh.
Like, not only did he, he bailed out the big banks, which, like, hey, maybe that could have been the right move for some economic.
I don't think so, man. Fuck that.
Okay, but I'm willing to be open to that possibility, right?
Okay.
But
For libertarian, it's a great move.
okay, but that, I don't know. I don't even care. But what he also did was he was responsible for the massive student loan debt. Like, he loosened the regulations so that more and more people could begin pulling out student loans in more different ways. And he did that. That was the thing. And so now we have, like, I think most of the debt in our nation is student loans, and it's massive. And then he started allowing the Democrats started allowing foreign investors to buy up all the property in major urban centers, which is very clear if you actually go to them and you know which type of buildings to look for, like what they look like. Those are almost entirely owned by Chinese investors, but some other places too. And then he also started the race baiting. He was to distract all of us. Like, he's like, I know, I'll just make them fight with each other. That's awesome. And and that isn't directly related to economics, but when and then I think that more and more leftist organizations and companies, I think he probably funded, far left Marxist organizations were probably getting money from the top, but then there was no more money because he did officially bankrupt the Democratic Party. Like, was documented. He left it in like $2 or $3 million worth of debt, and that's pretty significant. And so I think I have always theorized what it is probably happening, because there is evidence of this happening. The far leftist organizations have long been funded by Islam, like Islamic people, often terrorists, or wealthy Islamists that work with terrorists and stuff. And then they have ties with the communists because they both hate America, and the communists are good lawyers. They actually have a lot of lawyers, and they get the Islamists that are in the United States out of charges of terrorist collusion by defending them using things like freedom of speech and freedom of religion. And so there's something in it for the Islamists. And so they, I think, pay the left. And I think that what must have happened is that the domestic left just doesn't have any money. They just don't. Obama ruined that for them. He spent all their money. It's like a VH1 behind the music special.
Well, that anger that they feel, I think, is a legitimate feeling, but I think that I just think they're a little bit confused as to both the cause of it
What
and
anger?
also the solution. With the anger over the fact that they're like poor.
No, who's they?
The people that you're describing on the left who don't have any money left.
No. I'm not talking about the poor people. I'm talking about the politicians.
Oh.
There's a reason that Hillary Clinton was getting such huge donations from Islamic governments.
But that was the whole deal. I mean, we know that now from the leaks, the DNC leaks that were published on WikiLeaks.
The WikiLeaks?
Yeah, the leaks. It was, as we know, it wasn't a hack. It was a leak. Yeah, it was a prearranged deal that Hillary would be the nominee because she could raise the money and the Democrat Party needed the money.
Yeah.
But now they're trying to throw Julian Assange under the bus so that they can delegitimate those leaks.
Yeah.
I'm still
And
waiting.
why are they still trying to do that if it isn't true?
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we haven't talked about the biggest news of the week, and that's the Mueller probe.
Oh
yeah.
yeah. This is very exciting. I'll
And
be,
Is
I'll
that
be
today
grabbing,
or
I'll be
or
grabbing
yesterday?
water. But I can hear you guys.
I mean, I think the watching how the media is going to deal with this, how they already are starting to deal with this, is so infuriating. They are such liars. There's just no way
I
around it
think
now.
most of the sane people in this country already knew that the president was not a foreign, not under control of a foreign state. I mean, I think most people already knew that, but there's this weird conspiratorial element on the left that wants to keep pushing this idea. You saw that whole thing with Rachel Maddow where she was like pretending to be on the verge of tears.
Well, and the person who first published that video got banned from Twitter.
I believe it.
Yeah, the person who made that, because that
believe it.
video has been going viral today. And
after that interview between on Joe Rogan's podcast with Tim Pool and Jack Dorsey and whatever that bitch's name was that was with him, it's
Yeah.
like it's all pretty clear. It's all made pretty clear how they operate. And it's almost expected at this point.
God, that was such a damning interview.
And you'd think that maybe
It
after
drove me
that,
crazy. I couldn't believe it.
I know, and you'd think after that shit show that maybe after Twitter had a big talking to on probably one of those popular podcasts that they, as Jack likes to pretend, would maybe sincerely try to change and be understanding. And no, nothing's going to change. They don't care.
I'm shocked
Well, I
they've just
mean,
found
they're
nothing to
seeing a
nail
large
Trump on.
decrease
How
in the
fucking
use of their
clean is
platform.
he?
And like we're starting to see a lot of analogs to these failing platforms, emerge. I guess Facebook has Minds, Twitter has Gab, YouTube has BitChute, and I think eventually people are just it's gonna go the MySpace route where everyone just flees to a newer and better platform where they can say and do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
It's like the Wild West internet, I think was the best way to do things. And they're
Yeah.
starting to bring it under more and more regulation, more and more control, and it's offending more and more people,
Yeah.
who are getting constrained.
I wanted to say something when I was getting my water about the Tim Pool and Joe Rogan with Jack Dorsey and that woman. Oh, she was so awful. She was such a horrible person. Like, it was just like she is like the quintessential example of the adult teacher's pet that's just shameless about, like, knowing she can get away with being terrible and, duplicitous, like double speak and stuff. When they got to the part where Tim Pool was like, so I want to ask you this. You banned all the Proud Boys, but you didn't ban Antifa. And, and they started going back and forth. And she's like, well, I mean, they declared the Proud Boys a domestic terrorist organization. He's like, no, actually, that's not true. Somebody said that on accident. And then the sheriff, took it back. But Antifa is declared a terrorist organization in New Jersey. And she's like, oh, well, okay. Oh, it's because Antifa doesn't have a centralized organization. That's and the Proud Boys does. And he's like, they sell merch.
See, the way that she was responding to Tim Pool is exactly the identical way that they respond to their user base, and that's something that was totally shown nakedly with the whole Carl Benjamin thing. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
She talked to him like he was a child. Every time he would make a point, it would be like, "Well, Tim, blah 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 blah."
Well, no, you know what it sounded like.
Go ahead.
It's what it sounded like when she did the Antifa thing. When she tried, it sounded like she was an Antifa. It sounded like she was one of them. It's because that's what they always say. Like, they're like, well, Antifa's not an organization, so I can just be as terrible as I want with this like other group of 200 people and like totally, beat people up and pepper spray people and break windows and then just run away. But we're not an organization. Like, it sounded like she was entirely in on it.
And like, they love to call everyone else bootlickers when it's like, we're literally just watching you manipulate these major platforms that you clearly have a control over, and like they act like they're these like underdogs all the time, and it's
they call people bootlickers.
That's like their number one insult. They're like we're anarcho-communists. Anyone who disagrees with me is a bootlicker. I'm just like, you're stupid.
I've never.
I can't even engage. My brain just like shuts down. It's like,
Well, I don't even like when I started out as a left winger, I it was just like under the anarcho umbrella, right? And I remember very distinctly that we fucking hated the communists. Like we hated communists because of all the anarchists that they murdered, under communism. And this idea that now that there's this weird, I think the alliance that is there now is among people who don't have a practical understanding of these different political wings.
No, they're like complete morons. They just don't. They're completely uneducated and they don't.
They only read Harry Potter. I mean, how and it's if
And they go to like
if that's all you read, then like I would suggest that they read the Gulag Archipelago. That's something that provides astounding insight into actually how Marxism and communism and socialism and all of those isms actually like function.
I tried to audiobook the Gulag
practically.
Archipelago. That was like the saddest week ever. I was like, no.
I need to read it. Have you read it?
Literally, like trying to audiobook that shit, like your vision turns black and white. Like
No, and if you actually go, I think there were some interviews with Solzhenitsyn, online, and you can find them all over the place. And just the Gulag Archipelago goes through some of his experiences, but the way he describes them in his own words, like through the interviews, it's just horrific shit. It's horrific shit, and they don't really understand how their beliefs can translate over to that very easily.
Well, okay, I've actually heard recently, and maybe this is a common thing that they say, but apparently, according to the Antifas types, Stalin was not actually a communist. Stalin was a fascist, and he actually kicked out all of the Marxists and from the Soviet Union, or he
I just
murdered
don't know how to
them.
interpret that, given that everything to them constitutes fascism that doesn't vibe with their political proclivities.
Yeah, or like the utopia that they know that they're never going to get, but they're hoping that they can get. So it gives them permission to be as terrible as they want at all times to anybody. But wait,
as soon as it's not real communism, it's fascism.
I want to go.
Which one is the real communism that works again?
I want to go back to the Mueller probe ending because Chadwick brought that up, and I think I derailed it by talking about Twitter.
Sorry, I'm like almost at the end of a bottle of wine here.
Oh, Chadwick, you there? Oh, he must be away.
He might be taking a shit or something.
I'm so shocked. I'm so shocked they haven't found anything on Trump. I'm sitting there like, dude, like nobody could have survived this level of scrutiny. They found like
there
nothing.
Might be something having to do with the breach of the emoluments clause, but that's a very far cry away from Russia stole the election and all that shit.
No, the emoluments thing is such bullshit. It's like it's such a stretch.
I think that's the best argument that they could make. But besides that, there's like nothing, and it's been 4 fucking years, man.
The whole point of the probe was this Russian collusion narrative. 0 Americans have been indicted on collusion with Russia in the 2016 campaign. Now they've got who? Flynn and Manafort.
Well, the Clinton campaign is actually under investigation now for collusion with the Ukrainian government, which is an incredible twist of irony. But also, it shows how like they're constantly trying to accuse other people of doing the exact shit that they are doing.
The Clinton Foundation took $145 million from Russia. She also sold 20% of our domestic uranium to Russia. There's also this Ukrainian whatever's going on. So, and then we had what happened. I mean, what happened was when the Democrats realized that they might not win this election, and then when they didn't win, they freaked the fuck out because they knew they committed tons of crimes, especially with Obama spying on Trump through the tapping Trump Tower, getting the FISA warrant. They made up dossier, which they paid for. So they knew they were in some deep shit.
Do you think that they believed in the Christopher Steele dossier?
No, not at all. And I think that but they didn't care.
The Jeb Bush campaign, I think they latched onto it first. Am I wrong?
It was a Jeb Bush campaign, I believe. And no, because the dossier, I think they had it first, but the dossier didn't. I can't remember when exactly it came out, but I think what happened was the Democrats suddenly freaked out. They thought, oh shit, people could be going to jail. We need to turn the narrative around quickly. So if we were doing shady things with the Russians, well, we just need to talk to all of our friends in the media and make sure people think that it was the other guy doing it. And
Yeah.
it was
a preemptive no you.
That was
It's like the room is quiet, and then they're just immediately like, oh fuck, no you, and it's like no one said anything.
Like,
yeah, no, okay, this is what I said. When it first started, like when the Russia narrative first came out, I had been following all of the elections so close because, you know, starting from Hillary Clinton stealing the nomination from Sanders was a really big deal to me. So I was following every detail. And I had just started my YouTube channel. And I met this hacker, and he's actually really smart and really, really well informed, and he knows things that are, you know, he has ways of. He's probably in some like weird secret hacker groups where you have to hack your way in to even be there. Is what it sounded like, because he knew these weird things, and he had like documents and shit, like really strange documents that were hard to obtain, but you could tell were authentic because it was. I shouldn't get into all of that, but I was talking to him for a while, and it was just me and him over a Google call, but we weren't public. It wasn't a live stream, and I was like, you know, it kind of seems as if the Democrats did so many things wrong that they just decided to throw a smoke bomb on the ground and run away. And the smoke bomb is the Russia story. And he's like, that's exactly what it is.
Now, to be fair, this exact same thing happened under the last president. The only difference is that he didn't get like a very expansive probe, you know, about it. Like the whole idea that the president is a foreign state actor or something. Remember, they were constantly saying that Obama was like some secret Muslim or some kind of weird shit like that, or like the birthers, you know, that whole thing. But it never got as expansive as like the whole Mueller probe.
Yeah, no, everybody could say it was racist.
Well,
look, I think we need to make a list of every journalist who pushed this, and now every time you refer to them in public or in print, you preface their name with Russia conspiracy theorist.
But they're not stopping though. They're doubling down, actually.
Well, you know, if they ban Alex Jones for being a conspiracy theorist, I think shouldn't Rachel Maddow be banned? Shouldn't Chris Cuomo be banned? I mean, these people push the greatest hoax in modern politics for 2 years, unquestioningly. Just pushed it, just Russia collusion, and they all knew it was bullshit. Everyone knew it was bullshit. It was only some of the idiots on the left in their audience.
But apparently, as John mentioned, they likely are doubling down, and I think that they're going to say that it was that Trump engineered a cover up.
Yeah, oh no,
like
they are.
They've already started like that.
Yeah, they've already started that. That's. I mean, what else do you expect from these fucking liars and these frauds and these hacks who are just never circling the wagons? And the same thing with the. I mean, this is a much less significant case, but they did the same thing with Jesse Smollett. They immediately started congratulating themselves on how well they reported it and how honest. And then, well, maybe actually there is something to this. No, they're all going to circle around and protect their own and try to gaslight the American people into thinking that they didn't propagate this complete piece of bullshit for 2 years and waste all of our time.
Can I kind of change gears here for a second? Because I have a question for the group here. I'm wondering if any of you have any legitimate criticisms of the current administration.
Oh yeah, it's way too left wing.
I love the president, and I don't have any big ones, except I want that wall to be 40 feet of solid concrete with, you know, shark-infested moats around it.
I mean, it can't be flowers and ice cream and smiles. I mean, there has to be something that's
okay. Well,
that
for me, I would say that there's been some strange behavior in terms of his foreign policy. I don't want to say that I know enough about it to, you know, entirely approve or disapprove, because I don't know a great deal about foreign policy personally.
We're just talking opinions here, man. It's cool.
Well, yeah, but I make it very, very clear when I don't know a whole bunch about something, because I don't want to mess up and say something that I would end up not meaning later. So I would say that it has seemed like some of the things that have happened, like with Saudi Arabia, are kind of weird. But like, I'm no expert, and I, you know, like if I really, really know something pretty well, I'm willing to talk about it. this is not something that I know so well. I would say though that the reason why nobody okay, if you can get past this notion that Trump is this like horrible monster that just wants to put a price tag on our country and sell it to the highest bidder or whatever people think, and then he's this racist, blah 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 blah. If you can get past that, and then you start realizing just how horrible the Democrats are, and they're the worst party that has ever existed in our nation, and they are probably at their worst moment of all time, compared to the other parties of the decades in which the Democrats were also really all KKK'd out and all those other things that they did. But I think overall, I mean, they just don't have nothing right now, and I think that when you realize that the narrative in our nation, Trump is actually doing all these things, but the narrative is controlled by the left. Like what we're always talking about at any given time is always what the left basically throws a temper tantrum into getting us to talk about. And if you become aware that that's what's going on, it's really hard. You don't have time to search for the bad things about Trump because you're always like trying to unpack the lies coming from the left and what all their like loaded statements and all that stuff. And you end up defending him just because you're defending the truth. You're not even defending him. You're just defending the fact that they're lying constantly. And so, I mean, hey, honestly, I would probably like it if I had more time to think about what is he really, really doing wrong. But the problem is the left is always saying the things that like either things are just entirely untrue or saying things that he's doing right are things that he's doing wrong. So you just don't have time.
I think that's a really astute answer. I think you're totally right on a lot of that. Yeah, I mean they're just so evil and so awful that like who has time to even really put a microscope under President Trump, because it's like look at everything we're up against.
Yeah, one of the things that I heard that was a really good way to describe. So one of the things I did recently, over the past year, I read the book Unholy Alliance by David Horowitz, which is about the history of the United. So it goes through both probably post World War II history of the left, and then also starting in like the late 70s or so, the way that Islamic governments started sort of changing directions in how they how they conducted their own PR the world over, and how eventually they the Islamic people allied themselves with the communists or the post-communists or whatever. I think post-communist might be a good term because a lot of these people wouldn't call themselves communists, but they came from a legacy of organizations and leaders who were communists. So these in that book, one of the central thesis was based around 9/11 and how the left, they their reaction to it was immediate anti-war protests that were as big as Vietnam by the end of the first or second year, which it took like something like really, really long time. It took, I think there was a protest the size of Vietnam after
That's funny considering that there are like 50 times as many American soldiers that died in Vietnam.
Yeah, and it took them like 5 years to get to the amount of protesters that there were within like the first year of 9/11. And so it was like very clear that there was like all these dormant anti-war groups that just sort of came out of the woodwork as soon as there was another like actual war. And I got a very astute comment about it. Like I talked, I don't know where I talked about it in a video or something, and somebody said, "Yeah, there actually were good reasons not to go to war in Iraq, but you certainly never heard any from the left."
Yeah, remember when Colin Powell got in front of Congress and he held that vial of this white powder, and he showed all these pictures that were supposedly like, the that whole weapons of mass destruction thing. That was a lie. Right?
Well, no, it's actually, here's the thing about that.
A lie pushed by the media, and the media, just like with the Mueller investigation, there'll be no consequences for their lying.
Well, no, but
Just
okay,
move on and pretend
one
to
of
be virtuous.
one of the things that David Horowitz said in his book, it was I'm sort of paraphrasing, and I might slightly get this wrong. There actually is a network of numerous anti-American, anti-Western governments, or anti-liberal democracies rather, that existed in the Mid East. They're not exactly the same as they used to be, but that would include things like Al Qaeda and Saddam Hussein, and I'm sure some other people, and they did have this legitimate way of doing things where they would sometimes ally with each other and have or like harbor maybe like Iraq would harbor Al-Qaeda members in it for a while, so that if the United States or the European Union type countries decided that they wanted to investigate a certain place for some reason, for humanitarian violations or something like that, they could always go to one of the other countries or whatever. And it's the same kind of thing that they do. Like, that's what the national security stuff was supposed to be built upon.
Well, supposedly ISIS has been defeated. Do you think that same identical analog could exist there? Like, they're just kind of. I find it hard to believe. Like, I would think that they would just go somewhere else and hide, and then
probably rebrand, hide. And so what David Horowitz said, and I don't know this for true. Maybe it's wrong, but what he said was, the United States was already fearing that Iraq was, up to something, and that they were doing something really, really bad. And then 9/11 happened, and they felt as if they had to actually probe Iraq, because if they didn't, it would send a signal that we were weak and that we were unwilling to thoroughly investigate them. So we did, but because of the fact that it was like I think that this is what he said, because of the fact that it was like kind of a stalled action, because it required a lot of debating in the United States, they were able to not disarm all of the weapons, but they did have chemical weapons and they got rid of them. But they could also go ahead and build them again fairly quickly if they wanted to, which is why we ended up actually going into the war. So they didn't have weapons of mass destruction, but they did have the capabilities of building them. And it's well speculate, I think that more likely than not, that they did temporarily have some, I don't know, big vats of the chemicals that can kill people in really disgusting ways or something. They just got rid of them.
He did gas bomb the Kurds, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he did things like that to his own people. And
but those were with what I think that supports the notion that, and I guess we're getting off topic, but I think it supports the notion that Saddam Hussein was a CIA contract agent.
Yeah, I have no idea about that. But so it's a little bit more, I guess the point of this is it's a little bit more complicated than saying that these weapons of mass destruction simply didn't exist. But there was, but there is good ways of countering the notion. Like, maybe it was the wrong war at the wrong time, maybe blah 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 blah. And there's a lot more, like if you know the full story, which I don't entirely, but David Horowitz really seemed to, and I read his book, and so I was able to follow it at the time. If you know the whole story, there were possible reasons why this wasn't a good move, but the left just doesn't understand anything about the military and military strategy and what you actually have to do to ensure that less terrorist attacks happen and that less humanitarian atrocities happen. But And so instead, they're just like, war is bad.
But not anymore.
You know?
Not anymore because it's
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Trump base that's very anti-war, very isolationist in foreign policy, and that's forced the left to now come out in favor of bombing Syria. I mean, if you remember, the only
That's so
time
weird. It's
isn't
so
it
weird.
so
That is a very
bizarre?
bizarre thing.
If you remember, the only time the media in lockstep has been nice to Trump was when he bombed Syria.
Hmm.
And remember how pissed he, and he. I don't think anyone got
I remember at that exact same time though. That was right around the time that what was it that guy had gotten run over at that left wing rally in Charlottesville. It was right around when Charlottesville happened that he was doing that giant the bombing in Syria, and so even then he still couldn't get a break
Yeah,
because
I
they were
think.
shit talking him over that at the same time.
Yeah, well, yeah, and they, probably if he bombed them some more, then they would have forgot about Charlottesville and got back on his side. Who knows? But they were. I mean, and it was sort of a. I mean, his base was pissed off when that happened, and he bombed like a couple of like empty warehouses, and it wasn't like a real. He just sort of did it because I suppose he felt like he had to, just to show he wasn't going to back down. But still, the media was they were loving him then. It was they had the fancy war show and the missiles exploding in air that they could show their viewers, and they were completely delighted by it.
Well, I think personally, I don't really, some criticisms I have is like I don't like decreasing national conservation space. Like I don't like the ramping up of the or the continuation and ramping up of the nuclear arms, and I don't really like. Well, I guess the revision of NAFTA I thought was okay because actually I was in Mexico at the time, and I think that was pretty positively perceived.
Yeah. Well, what about conservation space? He just signed it. Didn't he just sign like 335,000 acres to be protected federal land, additional acres?
Well, that's great. I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah, he
The
did.
last I had heard, he was actually shrinking the size of a national parkland.
No.
Yeah, I think that he did do that, but I think it was probably for potential resources that they might have on them. But then he was like, "Well, let's."
Oh, I think that was specifically Alaska. I think for drilling.
Yeah. But hey, Miles Kinslow gave me $20, and thank you very much for that. Says, "Hey guys, the only thing I can appreciate in the Trump era is it has exposed the people with principles from those without. This is a time for fundamental ideas that bully society, like free speech." Wait, how? Okay,
I think he means build society. That might be a typo.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. It's so amazing the way, I mean, I want to say the 2000 since the end of 2015, I have been continually just my world has shattered over and over and over and over as I realized that basically everybody I know are terrible, shallow people that will do exactly what other people are doing. And I think a lot of those people were looking to me for some sort of like creative, even moralistic guidance, because I, had a tendency to talk so much and like rationalize and justify why I felt a certain way. And they're like, yeah, okay, well, if Prince says that, yeah, I get that. I can get on board. And then I went away from the type of thing that they were used to. And then they were all just like totally decided that I was wrong about everything. But I don't think that they necessarily even thought that. Okay. Point being, they were these very duplicitous, weak-willed people that had no actual what was the word you fundamental no actual foundations behind their ideas. It was all just whatever seemed sort of right at the moment, and apparently they had no memories past 3 years ago at all. And it has been, it's been a real shock. It's been painful, because it makes me feel so incredibly alone in my city and with so many of the people that I've known for a long time. And I end up finding random new people that are a friend of a friend that I never met in person, who actually has a lot of integrity. And I don't know what his voice sounds like. We only like comment on each other's Facebook posts, but I want to meet this dude and hang out with him, not for any reason besides the fact that he has a lot of sincere integrity. And he's somebody that I would have never thought I would have wanted to hang out with 5 years ago. So that has been a really great thing that's happened, but also a really, really uncomfortable thing that's happened, to see all the people who don't have principles. And
I just have one more criticism that I'd like to express, and that's like I'm very uncomfortable with Donald Trump's fulsome, gushing support of Israel. Honestly, I'm not blind to the fact that they have very significant strategic importance to the U.S. military, but I personally think that they need to be cut off. I think we should cut them off, and like not only can we save money, but also like ideologically speaking, like they're kind of dicks, and like I don't think we need to be supporting like that part of the world.
I do not with all due respect, I do not understand people who are against support for Israel. And our support amounts to something like what, $3 billion a year maybe in military support. I mean, it's nothing. That's like 0.05% of the federal budget.
The fact that that's a very small portion of the federal budget is actually a shame. Like given how much we actually spend on like the military.
I agree with you, but I'd much rather see something like welfare cut before we would do that. The reason why I'm so confused by it is here we have a teeny tiny little speck of a nation in the Middle East that actually is a bastion of more or less Western liberalism and freedom, surrounded by the most horrible and awful regimes on the planet. And people are complaining that we support them. I don't understand it at all. I do not understand people who don't.
Well, I mean, I don't think that we need to be creating bastions of Western liberalism and freedom like in any other part of the world except the United States, honestly. And I think it's a waste of money. And I think that their actions just among their own government is what makes them hated throughout the world. And like they should be the ones to deal with that, not us.
They're surrounded by people who want them nuked and wiped off the face of the planet. So
but that's something that they need to deal with. I'm totally against foreign interventionism of any kind. I just especially after the Bush era and like all the money spent there, I don't think it's productive. It hasn't been productive.
Well, I think it was just a bad idea in the first place, but now it's kind of like there's so many years into it that it's like there's no good option.
Well, I do think
that doesn't make me feel any better about it.
When a lot of the conservatives kind of pounce, as the media likes to say, and call people who question support of Israel anti-Semitic. I obviously don't think it's anti-Semitic to question the foreign policy, but I mean, if we're going to have some of our strongest allies in the world, like Israel and the UK, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think those are really terrific allies to have.
Well, we command the most powerful military on the face of the planet. I don't really think we need them as allies, honestly.
I don't know. I think that the wars being
like if it came down between Israel and the U.S., we would crush them. No doubt about it.
But here's the thing: the wars that are going to be fought from this point in terms of the like fully developed nations, nations that Israel, the UK, major forces like Russia, China, and the United States, we probably won't really have like an actual war with each other ever. Like that probably just won't happen because everybody has nukes.
China's economy is so intertwined with ours that there's no. I just don't see a real relevant possibility that they'll ever, become our enemies like militarily. I don't see that.
They'll have weird trade wars and stuff, and having an anchor in very, very close allies in Western Europe, in like something in the Mideast, and so that is actually going to be really important to us. And it's hard for me to articulate why because I'm still sort of groggy. But I guess it would just be that, like there is like third world and or second world, if that's even a thing. No one ever says second world, but countries that are still developing, they're not to the sort of overall standard. They probably don't have nukes, and occasionally we'll have to do some sort of military, or it will seem like the thing to do some sort of military intervention in one of those nations, and it will be good to have someplace in the Mid East. But you know uh that's what I think kind of is what Israel, like, directly how they
I'm just not into it. And I think when we look here in the United States, we're having real severe problems, ideologically spreading Western democracy just here in the United States. Like
yeah.
we spread ourselves so thin, just like ancient Rome. Like we spread ourselves so thin across the world that we've actually neglected things here in the
I agree.
States.
I agree.
I agree,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
agree.
yeah.
But
I guess I'll just say
And
I'm trying
Three,
to.
and I know $3 billion is a drop in the bucket when compared to our overall military spending, but not only is that a shame, but that's still a lot of money.
Okay, I'm just saying that I can sort of see the argument, but I'm undecided about it, really. Like what you're saying compared to what
Again, these are just my criticisms of Donald Trump, the current administration. I mean, I don't see it as all being so great as the full-fledged Trump supporters would. I mean, I try to maintain some kind of objectivity about it, and it's like,
Yeah.
while I am supportive of the current administration, I recognize that, like, there are some areas where and I think that's one in particular where I think there's needs to be some work.
Yeah, and I see you. I see you when you say that. I just don't. I don't have a conclusion myself. So I guess for me, I sort of riff about, like, I'm mentally thinking out loud what are the pros and the cons, and then I realize I just don't really have a very definitive answer. And so
Well, fuck you then.
I don't understand why people still focus on this when we have. I understand why lefties do, because they are taking the side of Islam, and I'm not saying that's what you're doing. I mean, I understand what you're saying from the anti-interventionist.
I mean, I'd be the first to say, I've actually, like, read the Quran and I've gone through all of that, and, like, I understand how horrible it all is. I mean, don't get me wrong, man. Like, I'm not a Palestinian supporter either, because they're particularly brutal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you
but-
on being anti. I'm a nationalist. I don't want interventions. I don't want needless foreign wars. But I also
Well, nationalism has become something of a dirty word these days, hasn't it? But I mean, I
Well-
think there's something to it. I mean, the idea that we should marshal our,
there's no reason for it to be. I get, well, finishing my previous thought is as you both had mentioned, there's so many other problems to deal with. I'm like, why are we even talking about Israel? Let's, like,
Well,
get the
see, I was just saying, like, I was just bringing up, because nobody ever brings up, the criticisms, and so it's like I'm just bringing up the realm of criticisms.
Yeah,
But it's like I'm not saying that it's even that
yeah.
big of a deal or whatever.
I
But
understand them.
if I had to make a criticism, like that's one that I would point out.
Yeah, I understand, and I understand. I think I understand where you're coming from, and I can totally respect why you feel that way. But when you said nationalism becoming a dirty word, it's interesting because it never should be in America. Like in Europe, I can understand why it's a dirty word because of their history in the 20th century. But in this
Well, I mean,
country,
according to the lefties, it's like they don't want to hear nationalism on any level. It's like they're
but it's interesting that we forced
like
them
nationalism to them is the same as like white nationalism or
That's
like
totally- that's
racism
totally-
or whatever.
Yeah, because
It's like
they don't understand that this is a country built on ideas and values and not ethnicity and
Precisely.
or religion or what have you. Yeah, but it's interesting that forcing them to condemn nationalism also then pushes them into saying they support, as far as saying they support completely open borders.
Well, that's
right,
the
like
thing.
they want a borderless society where everything's
Yeah,
free.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know
Well,
how
we
practical
forced
that's going
them
to be.
Yeah, and we forced them to acknowledge, many of them, and even prominent ones, the Democratic Party. We forced them to just to say they support open borders, which is so unpalatable to the majority of the people in this country, even the moderates. I mean, which is a nice thing. We make them show how crazy they truly are.
But
Well,
I
they're
think
also admitting
if
like
you get face to face with someone who actually believes that, and you ask them like, "Do you believe that we should have borders?" and they say no, and you say, "Well, why?" Well, then that kind of stops them in their tracks right there. I mean, that typically like face to face interactions with people, they can't justify that on any reasonable level.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yep.
it's weird because like the nationalism and populism have almost become like the same thing in their mind, and like it literally seems to mean nothing but governments doing things in the interest of their own citizens. So like not
Wouldn't it
only are
be
they
insane for them not to?
that's the thing. Like, so they're basically admitting that the point of government is to like disservice its citizens, which is actually, frankly, honest. And like this whole issue of government spending is like, the problem is that everything is a drop in the bucket. So like, then that's why we can never cut government spending because it's just like a trillion, like it's like a death by a thousand cuts thing where like nobody wants to give up their one tiny slice of the pie, and that's why the whole thing is just like so fucked beyond repair.
Oh, that's like I was talking to. I mean, it's so true. I thought one of the things Trump was going to do, which would have been so ballsy and amazing, is I thought there was a chance that he was going to completely get rid of the Department of Education, which I
Oh
think
my
was
god, that would have been so
genius.
good.
And I thought that's why he put Betsy DeVos in. I was like, oh, he's going to use her to start breaking it down, but I don't think that's going to happen now. It should. But I was talking to a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, who's a gay guy and a Republican and a Trump supporter, and he works for the city of New York in the buildings department. And he was saying to me, basically like, he's like, I could write a code to do my job for me. My job is so useless. I could write this code for a program to whatever he evaluates on building permits or whatever. And and I said, well, you should write that code. Why don't you write the code and then patent it and sell it? And he's like, because governments will never. He's like, can you imagine the headlines if governments laid off everyone in my job, city governments? He's like, they should lay me off, but they
It's
never
just
will.
like, dude, yeah, it's just like when people they're like, well, I avoid using the self-serve checkout at the grocery store because that's somebody's job. So I'm gonna make a point of using the actual person. I'm just like,
It's
you freaking
retarded.
Luddites, I hate you
Stupid.
all. And like
Uh,
the shit Yang fucking posts about all the time with like his like oh, automation's gonna kill everything. It's like, bitch, automation is literally technology. A fucking shovel is automation. Like you're just anti-technology.
yeah.
Yeah, like, I
Drives me
mean, it's not
crazy.
really smart as an individual to stick with an aging tech, like with an aging way of doing things, because you will be left behind. People who don't know how to use the internet now, they have no working power, and they don't have earning power. They're completely left behind. If you want to be like one of those people, then that's completely voluntary. It's your choice.
Well, and I don't think it's a coincidence that since we got stupid $15 minimum wage in New York City, you've seen the automated fast food restaurant
Yeah.
machines.
They
They're
and they
popping up
ended up laying
everywhere
off a
now.
shitload of workers. Like,
Yep.
I don't think they understand that increasing I don't know why. I mean, it seems like basic math, but, like, when a business has to increase wages by, like, 1.5%, that means they have to lay off other people because they literally cannot afford to pay them. Like,
Well, and
Yeah.
it frustrates me so much because I've had this argument with people who support minimum wage, and like they'll always try to argue, well, no, because look, unemployment didn't go down. And it's like, you're so dumb. It's a fucking opportunity cost issue. Like, it means that all things being equal, like you would have had less of that. It's like they don't understand that like time is linear and that you don't get to have like all of your variables staying the same to have an experiment this way. And this is why like it drives me crazy when people criticize the Austrian School of Economics because they're like, oh, they reject empiricism. And it's like, there's literal reasons why in economics you have to reason from principles and use things like basic math. Like the broken window
I do
parable
think
shuts
feminists
down
understand
everything.
this. I do think feminists understand this. They're slowly starting to catch on because they're even coming out with children's books, and there's a whole movement about like women like learning to code and stuff like that. And it started before the whole meme and everything. I'm saying like there is an effort to get women like more and more into tech fields, and I think that's emblematic of how they're slowly starting to catch on to the fact that like one of the few things that the United States is number one in these days is like information technology.
Well, they'll admit to anything as long as they perceive it as pro-women. You can get them to admit to any series of self-contradictory propositions as long as you like trick them into thinking it's pro-women. And that's why the feminist movement is so like tangled and muddy and like self-contradictory because like the only thing they have in common is like women and women first.
Well, and with
Well, there's a cunning there.
yeah, well, that's how they operate. But with the well, even with the minimum wage, I tweeted something about it. Like, I think I said, like, oh, good thing, great New York, all of your grocery bills and all of your restaurant tabs just got more expensive. And then I had, some like 23-year-old college students trying to educate me on why we need minimum wage. And this one I was in a conversation with was, basically they view all business owners as the most evil, miserly, greedy people ever. And so we need this minimum wage to protect the poor, innocent workers, which actually it should be high school kids doing these jobs. So it doesn't fucking matter how much they make. That's what it should be. That's what it used to be like.
Well, they think if you own a business that you're like rich.
But this, and
it's
this is what I was saying. So I said,
like $1 million after taxes, if you own a business and have to pay for all of that shit, it's not really that much money, honestly, if you own a business.
If you've ever had anyone work under you, and the most I've had work under me at a certain time, I had 6 or 7 people working under me. And you want to pay your employees as much as possible because you know that if they're making more, they're going to be happier, they're going to do better work. I wanted to pay them more, and they were making good money, and I want to be paying them more. So I don't think people, sure, of course, there's some miserly business owners out there and employers, but the vast majority of people want their employees to be happy and taken care of. They don't want their employees stressing about things, especially financially. That way they're more attentive and focused and more productive at work. And the left doesn't seem to understand this.
Well, because you're talking.
If you go to Walmart, the reason that they have that self-service checkout is because like they were recognizing that they were paying like $20,000 a year to a lot of employees who were completely fucking incompetent. Like some of those people are assholes. Some of those people don't actually deserve like to be in that position. Like some of those people like are completely not inefficient, in the fact that they're even fucking there.
I have like a friend in Hong Kong. I was explaining to him that like in America we have Walmart greeters, and he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we have like a person at the door, and like their job is to say hi to everyone." He's like, "What?" Like, but the person standing there, like, aren't they in the way? Like, how is there space for that?
That's actually smart on Walmart.
It's great.
Aren't they there to prevent people from stealing or some shit like that?
Well, I guess that's part of it. But like, the thing is though, is it's psychologically useful. Like, if you see a human face and they say hi to you, like that makes you less likely to steal.
The Walmart greeter
makes me more likely to kill myself.
The Walmart greeter is way more important than the bitch checkout girl. Because the Walmart greeter is always like a sweet old man, and you see them, and you're like, oh, and it makes you feel good about shopping there. I mean, it's actually a really valuable job, I think, for Walmart. I think they're smart to have it. The cashier can be replaced by a robot. But
that's the thing. Like, I worked retail, and a big part of my job was they're like, okay, like we're a small store, and like we want to have like a good experience, so you have to make sure you greet every single person who comes in, and that's like part of our survey. And that's like part of our quality assessment and everything. And like it's a legit service. And the issue is that when you have minimum wage, you have people who like they need to have a job that's simple, that like most of the challenge is like showing up on a schedule and being reliable, and just having that on a resume and being able to say you can do that is so valuable. And what you're doing is just cutting the bottom rungs off the ladder. And it makes me so angry, this idea that like we can't have that kind of a position because people need their fucking $15 minimum wage. It's so stupid.
Yeah.
The real minimum wage is and always will be $0 when they don't hire you.
And the crap jobs, like I said earlier, the crap jobs that people do for minimum wage, it should be high school students. And instead, high school students don't work anymore. They're just pampered by their parents.
Well, and honestly, I think like there's a huge problem with separating work and education. I feel like I learn so much more working, and I just feel like we almost don't even need education as a separate thing. Like we should just learn through jobs, and we should just really embrace the merging of those two things. Like companies do so much educating and training of you when you're trying to do that job, and it just feels so much more awesome to have a resume of like, here's a bunch of shit I did, like here's people I met, here's like things that like I've had a real experiences at work doing these things, these jobs that everyone looks down upon, and then like I look at my education. Like I remember I was like applying for a temp agency at one point, and they're like, how come your work is on top and your education's lower? Like people aren't going to realize that you're college educated. And I'm like, oh, I put them in order of what I thought would be relevant. Like
yeah.
But they're like, no, you have a college degree. That should be the first thing you put on there. I'm just like, oh, sorry.
Unless you're in medicine or engineering or law, there's no reason to go to college, and you shouldn't. Unless you're doing it just as a hobby and you just want to take some courses and learn about, Renaissance literature or something. There's no
Oh
reason.
yeah, I took Dalcroze Eurythmics. That was so cool.
No, yeah, but I think back on college, I mean, it was such a waste of money and time. Obviously, I took classes I loved, but they were completely useless, and then you get in debt for it. But yeah, I mean, I always advise young people to drop out of college when I talk to them, especially journalism students. And I get my. I don't know if you guys have this. Do your alma maters calling you for money all the time? They have students. I just start going off on them now. I'm like, what are you studying? Why are you studying that? You need to drop out.
What was your major?
I majored in English and journalism and creative writing.
Holy shit, I majored in journalism. That's funny.
Oh yeah.
I did philosophy
But
and music.
apparently Generation Z is supposed to be much more entrepreneurial than the previous ones.
That's what they say.
And much more conservative, apparently.
I wish I was a Zoomer. I'm so sad I missed the cut.
A Zoomer.
That's what they are. There's boomers and not Zoomers.
That's really funny. I've never heard that. That's good. Zoomers.
I love it.
I mean, they so much of college. I was talking to somebody that I worked with when I was doing remote video security and analyzing this stuff, and he was saying that when he went to UTSA, UT San Antonio, it's like the first thing that you had to do was take a college course in how not to rape women. And that took up a good bulk of like his college experience, though that kind of shit. And I'm thinking to myself, like, well, what does that have to do with actually like if you're in a STEM field, like who gives a shit? Like what does that have to do with anything? And how do you not already know not to fucking do that?
Yeah, it's very absurd. The closest thing that we had to that in my college, which was very far left, was a course that you had to take first semester of freshman year.
Where did you go, if I may ask?
I went to Eugene Lang. It's a division of the New School. But I ended up what they do was they had freshmen take a class that was taught by sophomores about basically acclimating to the school, getting used to the school, which honestly sophomores shouldn't even be teaching that. It should have been seniors, but I think that they didn't want seniors to have to actually do that. And then also acclimating to New York City and like talking about their social lives. And it was a seminar thing, so there's like 15 students and then two sophomore kind of teacher people, and I think that maybe we talked about sexual violence, but not in any preachy strange prescribed way. It was just whatever the students wanted to say, and it just ended up being kind of like a dinner party, but during the day with no food or booze. And
they made us watch a rape play. It had an actual name, but we just call it the rape play.
Like that, sort of like a version of what they did in Freaks and Geeks when they had the drunk driving play.
No, yeah, exactly. It was called Until Someone Wakes Up, and it was just like a series of monologues about people being raped, and we're just like, thanks.
Oh my god.
Okay, hey, so guys, I want to we're getting towards the end of this, and I want to bring up a thing that I heard. So Trump just signed the bill
about 11 inches. Wait, what? I'm sorry, go on.
Hey, message me after this.
So Trump just signed a bill that was demanding the federal funding of universities will get withheld unless they, actually endorse or carry out the free speech directive, which has always been there. But they, under Obama, was actually seemingly actively encouraged them not to do. So now colleges have to allow speakers. And people are saying that due to things like Donald Trump Jr. Writing in apparently numerous outlets about how this needs to happen on the internet, they're thinking that maybe Trump will move to do that, something like that to the internet. Do you guys think it's actually going to happen?
No.
No.
I just wrote a column about this for the Washington Times. There's no. Well, here's the best way for it to happen, and this is starting to happen in Florida. Is taking the gay marriage approach and doing state by state and state legislatures. And there is actually a bill in Florida that's about to go to committee that a Republican state senator has introduced that would basically fine social media companies up to $75,000 for censoring, deleting accounts, deleting tweets of speech that's protected by the First Amendment, which of course the First Amendment doesn't have any hate speech clause. So I think if you you can see my column about this in the Washington Times. I interviewed the senator behind it, and I interviewed Ron Coleman, who's a First Amendment lawyer. He's representing Gab McGinnis in the case against the SPLC. And Ron had sort of mentioned to me this was the best approach, and then like 2 days later, this bill was announced. So that was interesting. But there's no political moment for anyone in Congress or the president or even the courts to do this. You know, a lot of people thought that all we need is a really well-funded litigant to go to the Supreme Court and maybe bring up some precedents where privately owned property owners have to protect constitutional rights of the public if the public is sufficiently, if their property is sufficiently open to the public. And there is Supreme Court precedents on this, but there's simply no political moment. I mean, I think it has to go the gay marriage route, because the gay marriage, the first state was Massachusetts in 2004. There was no political moment in 2004, but it was left-wing state governments that began to pass it. And when one state passes controversial legislation, it might as well be that all 50 did, because others will follow suit, and then eventually it will go to the courts, and that's the moment you need.
So you think that if this does happen, it's going to be in some number of years?
I think we need one red state to just do it. And so right now there's something on the table in Florida. It'll probably be at least a year before it's even voted on.
Huh.
But
Okay,
I think
so
it's the only way to do it.
now clarify what exactly is going to be happening. Is that Florida citizens, maybe anybody who is like a YouTuber that is based out of Florida, for example, they get their channel deleted, and then Florida will somehow fine the people in the Silicon Valley somehow? Is that,
Yeah, it's basically that. So I don't know if it's going to be retroactive for people who've previously been banned. Like Laura Loomer lives in Florida, so I mean, but they should do something retroactive. So the bill hasn't even gone to committee yet, so that'll change a lot of it. But the way it's written now would be essentially, if there would have to be an appeals process. So if Twitter banned a Florida resident for my hate speech, that by law there would have to be an appeals process where the person could appeal to Twitter. If Twitter still didn't reinstate their account, then the state would have the legal right to fine the social media company for it if that person's speech was protected by the First Amendment. So it doesn't necessarily cover pornography, direct threats of violence, things of that nature. So if and what's interesting is that these social media companies do respect and honor speech laws in the places they do business, and all you have to do is look at the Middle East and look at Europe. Even just Michelle Malkin, the conservative pundit Michelle Malkin, a couple of weeks ago, she's an American citizen, born and bred in the United States, has always lived here, and she got this weird notification from Twitter the other day that one of her tweets was violating Pakistan's blasphemy laws.
yeah.
Like just, not that they can do anything, but just letting you know. And so, of course, with the EU, social media companies are scrambling to, the EU's speech laws are very strange and not very transparent. And now these social media companies are having to scramble to try to meet the speech laws, the ever-evolving speech laws in the EU. So these companies do, if these companies will respect speech restrictions in other places, why can't they protect our speech freedoms? And so if it takes one state to do it, it would really throw them into a tailspin.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It just takes one red state. One red state is all it takes.
Okay.
So that's my opinion on it.
So there is hopefulness, but not
Who
as.
knows? If
But
it were,
don't
I
hold
think
your
that's
breath.
exerting way too much effort. I think they're going to take the path of least resistance and focus their legalistic efforts on the alternatives that already exist that are being censored.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that like long before there's any sort of legal solution or workaround, the market's just gonna solve it. Like we have all these all these competitors that are getting more and more momentum. And like their major appeal is that people just don't want to get fucking censored.
And we're talking about dying platforms already. Like people are fleeing Twitter. People have already begun fleeing Facebook a long time ago. I doubt that they're going to focus their legalistic efforts on those already dying platforms. I think it's going to be more focused on the newly emerging platforms and how to protect free speech on those platforms.
The other
Yeah.
thing too is like I don't think they actually care about following any of these laws, or there's always an ulterior motive. It's always being selectively enforced. So I feel like if you have these laws that are supposed to protect people in their speech, like it's not really going to be as effective if the political motive isn't there.
yeah, there's no moment. Yeah, but it's still. But I don't think you're going to see. Well, I think this is a bright spot, and I agree these platforms are dying. I think Facebook is going to be the first to go, definitely. But but I don't think that we shouldn't expect President Trump to do anything. And I mean, one of the risks that lawmakers have when they do tackle this issue is, unfortunately, they are immediately and so easily maligned as standing up for the most extreme and fringe and hateful people in society, which isn't the case at all. You know, they're standing up for basically normal center right views, or just all views. Just you can't censor anyone. So I think that's especially where Congress is concerned, but even state lawmakers. That's obviously. I think they're all scared to even touch it.
Mhm.
Well, for Twitter, I think that's kind of like what complicates things is that they want to kind of have their cake and eat it too by defining themselves as like a public platform, almost a public utility, and at the same time wanting to regulate themselves as a private entity. And I just
Oh,
I don't really see that working out for them in the long run, honestly.
but
Right.
don't you know Twitter can do anything that it wants because it's not an organization.
It's not. It's decentralized. It's totally decentralized.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that.
I just like when I heard that news about Trump like potentially cutting federal funding to colleges that don't defend free speech. Like my initial reaction was like, "Oh, that seems kind of cool," but then I like take a step back and I'm like, "Why couldn't it just be the first part of that? Why couldn't it be just like Trump pulls all federal funding from schools?" And I was like, I hate the fact that like every victory with Trump is like it's just like fucking compromise, and I'm really sick of it. I really wish I could have like a Ron Paul style president.
Well, maybe a good solution would be to just throw more funding into the actual STEM fields that are more resistant, to this kind of ideological pressure than like,
No,
the
I'd
social
rather go
studies and
full
shit like
black pill
that.
collapsitarian than like endorse anything like that. Like if that's gonna be the kind of approach, then I'd rather be like, just nuke it.
I love that collapsitarian. That's a good term.
Yeah, and it's kind of started off ironic, but like it's feeling less and less ironic, and like I don't know how to feel about it because there's something like grotesque about that.
Mhm.
Being like, I have no hope, so we're just gonna do whatever we can to accelerate all this shit collapsing. But like it's really looking like there's no other path to having small government. Like if Trump's supposed to be our small government guy, we're not really seeing a smaller government.
Yeah.
We're just seeing a growing government at a slower rate. So why prolong the inevitable?
I think I'm much more my the fire in my belly is much more of that collapsitarian, let it all burn chaos mentality. Yet I can see like it's never going to happen, and we got to play the cards we're dealt, and we got to like work within the system. I mean, I agree with you that it is disappointing that we haven't seen government significantly shrink, and I would like for that to happen. But I know, Prince, you had a really interesting video that I wanted to write about defunding gender studies programs based on Title IX.
Oh,
You remember that?
yeah. You want to plagiarize me? Is that what you said?
No, I didn't want to praise. I was actually going to give you credit and quote you and tell you that you were the one that
Okay.
this idea. But
Oh, please do. Give me publicity.
but I was also curious how that works, because is federal funds necessarily allocated to these specific programs? Like, where you just say colleges who have these can no longer get funding
Yeah,
because it violates.
because it violates Title IX. I mean, you can't argue, like, if you look at Title IX, it's just like it says anything that cuts off opportunities or in acts in terms of discrimination. It's pretty vague wording. It could apply to a lot of things based on gender, you know? And so like, how can you justify an entire department that is based around telling people that men are horrible? And that is literally what it is. Like, they have this like bizarre alternate definition of the word patriarchy, which, I mean, once upon a time was maybe a useful word, but now has been stretched into such a broad brush that it doesn't even make sense. But it is, but we know that the one thing is that patriarchy means men are sort of evil and shouldn't be in charge of anything, and feminists should be in charge of everything. And you know, they sort of try to claim that it's that you know, there's patriarchal women too, and blah 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 blah. But ultimately, I think that it wouldn't be that hard to argue in court, like, to break down what they're saying with patriarchy and say that this is something that it is just demonizing men and teaching people to discriminate against men and teaching people that feminism is the way. And yeah, what if something is Title IX? What better example? And so there's these entire departments that are very powerful, and you could get rid of them by saying that each and every one of them is a Title IX violation. And things like the teach people how not to rape classes could be a Title IX violation. It's teaching people that men deserve to be told that they are already, you know, maybe going to do this horrific crime that very, very, very few people actually commit. And so, yeah, I think it could be effective. I just, what my biggest worry about the idea is, like, why did no one ever think of this before? But I think that there's a possible answer, which is just that people didn't actually really take gender studies that seriously and didn't actually think about what was being
kind of
taught.
swooped in under the radar.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, gender studies departments took over all of the universities over, you know, since around 2011. And
I'm a beast which cannot be fed.
yeah, yeah, it was a weird little odd kitten that was, you know, kind of stupid, and he's like, oh, I guess it's a kid.
I think where a lot of us are, you know, so much of the exuberance of 2016 and even 2017 has worn off, and that's where, like, with Spacepan, I'm with you on, like, yeah, my soul is in my love of chaos, but at the same time, or at least when it comes to, you know, burning down the system, which is what we certainly thought the election of Donald Trump was going to be, and in a lot of ways is. But it's like, now that so much of that exuberance is worn off and things have just become so exhausting, and the left has not changed, and they're still the exact same people, and they're still doing the exact same fights, I find myself so much more attracted to these sort of very practical, interesting, small attacks that we can just start dismantling these things piecemeal, in the same way that the left accomplishes its goals very incrementally. I mean, the left has immense amount of patience, and that's why they win, because they know it's going to be 100 years before they have the socialist utopia.
That's part of rules for radicals.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's why they win, and that's why there has been a steady increase since when, the 1950s, in the expansion of government, and it's not going to shrink. But if we can slow it down and also use what's available to us to start chipping away with this and you know, I don't know, that those are things I find most interesting lately.
I kind of agree with what you were saying earlier, and I'm kind of paraphrasing a bit, but I mean, I think you have ideals, which, you know, kind of the lefties believe in, and you have your imperfect reality, and as usual, you know, the imperfect reality always comes off a poor second, and you know, what we're forced to kind of deal with the imperfect realities, you know, and some people want to deal with them and some people don't. They want to live in a fantasy land, and you know,
Well, and like one of my
the unfortunate reality.
One of my favorite videos on YouTube is one. It's like over 10 years old now. It's one Molyneux did. addressing Ron Paul supporters and saying, politics is really just a massive distraction. And if libertarians had been focusing on trying to win over like the smaller cultural battles, you'd have freedom like so much faster. And his whole thing has been like, if we just convince parents to stop spanking their kids, then you start this intergenerational.
I totally agree with his point of view on spanking and like parenting. Like I'm all for that. And can I just say that, like, am I the only one who thinks that Stefan Molyneux looks like a giant penis?
Yeah, kind of.
It turns me on a little bit. I think that's why I like him partially.
I want to talk to you guys about dicks for a second before we sign off, if I may, because this is actually one of my favorite things, and this is not to say I particularly like either of these people, but I think this is genius. Did you guys see that Ben Shapiro and Andrew Yang are having a debate about circumcision?
I'm so pissed. Like, it's gonna be awful. It's gonna be the worst fucking thing ever. Because like Andrew Yang
with him and Tucker Carlson was not very good.
That
was the last one that I saw, and it wasn't very good. It was
Tucker
boring.
mopped the floor with him, and Tucker's arguments weren't as good as
weird.
He still won. He won the debate.
Okay. So wait, what does that have to do with penises?
So, well, their debate is about circumcision specifically. That's what makes it, because the whole debate's just about circumcision. I thought that was, and I like this debate a lot because I differ with, I'm anti-circumcision, and I had male genital mutilation as a child, and but someone like Milo, who's a good friend of mine, he's very pro-circumcision. So he and I have thought about this before. So I love that they're doing this topic. And
honestly,
I've never seen a debate about circumcision. I'm actually fascinated to hear that.
That's why I'm interested by it. It doesn't have to do with either the personalities. I just love the topic.
Okay, Milo, as an uncut dude, he should go get it done. He should donate his foreskin to someone who has been circumcised. He should put his dick where his mouth is. He should put his dick where his mouth is.
I don't know if he's uncircumcised or not, but he's culturally Jewish. So, but raised in the UK.
Well, I mean, I think the proper thing to do would be to show.
There we go.
He's got to show.
We should see Milo's penis. I mean, just for out of principle.
But like, I just got to get this off my chest. What pisses me off so much about the concept of Andrew Yang being the anti-circumcision like advocate is that on Twitter he totally backpedaled on his position being anti-MGM because he's like, oh well, of course, like it should be a choice for the parents, and I've attended a birth and it was such an honor. I'm like, oh, go fuck yourself. Like, you're gonna tell me that's literally like saying I'm anti-rape, but like it's up to the rapist. Like, if they want to do it and it's part of a ceremony, then it's okay. I'm like, oh, go fuck yourself. Like, you're not gonna advocate.
I think given that hospitals like push circumcision on parents, at birth, it's like it's kind of a hard argument that circumcision is tantamount to child abuse, which is one that I've definitely heard over and over again.
Oh, absolutely. I fully believe that anybody who has ever performed a circumcision on an infant should be executed. They should get the death penalty, and we should apply it retroactively. I literally
now having said that, like I've seen some of that Moyle shit, on like social media where they like cut the baby's dick and like suck it or whatever, and like it looks really fucking horrific.
Oh, well, and then there's a couple of cases in Brooklyn of infants dying because they got herpes from the Moyle.
Oh God, what the fuck?
Well, and here's the thing: people will say, "Oh, like pedophiles should all be executed, rapists should all be executed,
Dudes should all be executed."
Larry Nassar, who molested those girls, should give him the death penalty. Who fucking throw the fucking book at him? And I'm like, okay, like great, let's make that the standard, and then let's put everybody who cuts babies on the other side of it. Like, why is that so fucking hard?
And like kids, like what is with that shit? That's weird. Why is that even a thing? Like, just fucking use a rag or something. What do you have to?
And honestly, I use this as a platform to condemn all the Abrahamic religions, because this is like the easiest moral test ever. Like, should I cut a baby's dick with a knife? And they're like, I don't know. And it's like, your religion's garbage. It's worthless. If you don't have a clear answer to that.
I can see the argument for cutting the dick, but it's like sucking the dick with your mouth. It's like after that, like you just like that's a hard sell, man. That's a hard sell. Why do you have to do that? Just use fucking regular medical equipment.
I
Just like imagine if this is where women's rights were, where they had to be like, hey, we finally have someone who might be a presidential candidate who's against us being raped. But then he's like, yeah, but like sometimes it's okay. And it's just like it's the most obvious one move checkmate of how like men clearly have it worse than women. Like yeah.
What do you think about like male circumcision versus female circumcision? Do you think it?
There's
Like,
multiple-
he has. Okay, for the
No,
record,
there's
he has an answer for literally every question about circumcision that you can throw at him, and just so you know,
and I have like 1,000 questions.
We even know there's a stream on this channel. The very first episode of Gaytriachy was him debating one of the old co-hosts.
Master debating. I'm a master debater and a cunning linguist. I'll have you know right now.
Yeah, and I was mostly just sitting there like, okay. Like it was like the Gaytriachy in which I talked the least, and it was because Spacepan had an answer for everything that the other guy would throw at him, and it actually Spacepan kind of won the debate.
I got so angry because like there was a point where I was like he was trying to repackage everything I was saying. It's like, oh, so you're saying it's like symbolic because it's cutting the penis. I'm like, bitch, it's real.
Like that
literally
chick
what
who
we're
was
talking
debating
about.
Jordan Peterson. What's her name?
Kathy
that
Newman.
weird- That British woman.
So what you're saying is like yes,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
my thing though is like, so I'm not an int-activist. I'm an int-attacktivist. A lot of people can be much like cooler headed and like they'll give you all of like the sciencey articles, whatever. My approach is like, no, I'm gonna deal with this and discuss this topic in the same way that I think it should be. Because what a lot of people do is they say like, well, if it really is this bad, like how come men aren't protesting? How come people aren't pissed about it? How come people aren't? But I'm just like, okay, fine. Like we're gonna deal with it in those terms. And like I go and like all the like regret moms like piss me off. Because like they talk about like, oh, I totally regret my decision, blah blah, and I'm like, why? Where were you when the decision mattered and counted? And like, I really honestly believe that, like, it really seems like women, particularly mothers, they can't be bothered to have empathy for their child. They need to respond to social shaming. So like people who post like on Facebook like related to circumcision, it gets shared among intactivists, and then we all just mob the post. And it's
that whole thing when women give birth and like they feel like a loss of power. I mean, that's a real thing. Like that shame, like and oftentimes, like at least in some hospitals, like they push women into this particular birth path, and like they the amount of control that they the amount of control that they have, it's not as much as it seems sometimes.
Well, and there are even cases where parents are explicitly like don't do this, and they have to like guard their baby, and they're like where's that nurse taking my baby? And like there are cases
sometimes, and if you go and give birth at a hospital, they'll ignore your birth plan if they think that it's in your best interest, which is something I'm totally against. I mean,
and the other thing too is if you choose to keep your son intact, you have to watch like nurses, because most nurses in the US are idiots and they don't know how to deal with a real penis.
They'll snip your baby's dick behind your back. Seriously.
They'll do forced retraction. They'll do forced retraction. And that's why like there's an issue. No, it's a serious thing. People don't understand that like young males, like it's not supposed to retract. Like it happens naturally at like later on. But like most Americans,
I mean, like, and I've heard various times on this stream and also on your channel, Prince, like, talking about the abuse of males, and seriously, that shit sometimes it starts like at fucking day one.
Yeah.
Well, you asked why men aren't in the streets protesting, and it's the same old story that men. I mean, I don't know if men should be protesting, but they wouldn't feel like they could. I mean, it's the same reason why the men's rights movement is so much smaller and less visible.
But in some of those cases,
feminism, because
in some of those cases, the women are just as much victims. Like the mothers who give birth to those boys, like they're stripped of the ability to exercise that control, and like the hospital acts on their own. They act unilaterally against the mother and against the father and against the child.
I'm at a point in my life where I just basically turn down cut dick because I just like foreskin so much. I just basically turn it down now.
I hooked up with this guy one time, and it was like one of these things where we ended up staying up till like 2 or 3 p.m. the next day. There were some other people around, and
Is that called an orgy?
no comment.
I think we actually talked about this the last time I
Is
was
that
on the
called a
stream.
coke orgy? Got it. Okay.
No comment. But no, I docked him at one point. Like he was like, "Oh my god, foreskins are so hot," and I was so out of it. But like the sun was starting to come up at that point, and so I did. Like I totally like put the head of his dick inside my foreskin. I didn't know if I would be able to, but I actually figured it out, and he was really into it.
Jesus Christ.
These are so disgusting.
That's called docking.
Yeah, I docked him.
You people need Jesus. That's what
Oh,
you
I
need.
just wanted to mention though, because it came up earlier, it was in the chat, people comparing it to FGM. Basically, there's different kinds of both, and
I'm sorry,
most of the
can you clarify FGM?
female genital mutilation.
Oh,
there's
okay.
different kinds of both, and like basically, circumcision is somewhere in the middle of the genital mutilation chart, and the overwhelming majority of FGMs are like less severe kinds of it. Particularly the kind that happened in the US recently that caused like the big thing where the judge pointed out like you wrote this law fucking retardedly, so like FGM's legal, way to go feminists, fucking idiots, right? So like and everybody's outraged over that, even though those cases of FGM are dramatically less severe than what typically happens to infant males.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, how do you put that on a libertarian religious liberty scale? Because I think we'd all agree that FGM is a disgusting, hideous, barbaric practice. But is it not religious
Well, that's
freedom?
kind of
No, religious freedom is
what I was
such
asking
BS.
earlier.
I
Is
hate
like,
it.
how do you compare like male circumcision to female circumcision? I mean, like, if female circumcision is so bad, I mean, like,
I think with them,
wouldn't male circumcision be kind of on the same scale?
You can measure it by nerve endings.
Yeah.
You know, you're looking at like 8,000 or so severed from certain FGMs and like 20,000 from MGM. So
Oh,
is
shit.
it worse for men for circumcision?
yeah. Well, and the other thing too,
Damn,
so
I
it's
didn't
not
know
even
that.
it's not even about the severity of it. It's about the victim. The victim's a male, therefore they don't care. I know I sound like that sounds really like reductionist or whatever, but that literally is what it all boils down to. It's gynocentrism.
Well, I know a lot of males who would be complicit in that, you know, like we were
Yeah,
talking
a lot
about
of
earlier,
females
that
are too.
stoicism.
Yeah,
They did a
lot of-
study and they found like 80%. It goes down with education, but like of uneducated women, something like 80% are fine with being generally mutilated.
Like
Yeah, I can
I'm
see-
circumcised, but like I don't hold my dad accountable, you know, for
Yeah.
like a decision that is like pretty much like standard practice in a hospital. I mean,
It's only in the United States though when it comes to Christian
well,
nations.
yeah.
But to respond to the
America-
religious freedom argument, I mean, it's the same reason you can't have human sacrifice and then say, but more religion, you know? Like, there's no argument where you get to defend circumcision for religious reasons that doesn't also open the door to human sacrifice. And babies die. Babies die every year. Those are human sacrifices. Can you get what?
Can I get foreskin installed? Is that a thing?
There's a company called Foragen that's working on trying to like grow back foreskin, but then also if you look up
me right now? I was joking. Are you serious?
Yeah, they're working on it, and you know, I hope they achieve it because that'd be awesome. Like that should be that all the medical research should just go towards that because that's the real reparation.
Oh man,
honestly.
Hey, fuck cancer. Like
fuck cancer.
treatments and all that shit.
Fuck cancer. We're growing dicks back.
And
Well,
like,
yeah,
you know what they
I mean,
do with
that's an
foreskin,
investment.
right?
They
Like
would-
when they circumcise the skin, it's like they use it for like bandages and shit like that. Like
And they use it for
burn
beauty
victims.
products. Fucking Sandra Bullock, like fucking puts baby
Like
foreskin all
old
over her
rich
face.
cunts,
Like,
like
how many
putting fucking
guys-
like foreskin on their face so they can look younger.
Yeah,
like,
she's
2 years
literally
younger.
the queen. She's literally the queen from Beauty and the Beast, except less like badass and doesn't do black magic. Instead, she just like
Jesus.
rapes babies with knives for her fucking face.
How many guys have you been with who are uncut and you're like, oh my god, you're so much more sensitive than I am down there, and it's like you get a little jealous. I'm like, what have I been missing out on my entire life?
The other part of
Honestly-
it is there's also you can like stretch out what's left of the skin and use that as a way to restore also. But there's an argument that if you go that route, it might make it more complicated to try to regrow it once the technology is available. So there's kind of a catch-22 there. But I was at Burning Man actually. I went to there was like an event or like a seminar that they had that was related to circumcision, which was actually it was really cool they had that. But the guy there was talking about how basically every time he would get more of his foreskin to get more restored, he'd feel happy because it's like, wow, like this feels so much better, like it's so much more complete. But then he'd also feel sad because he's like, that means I didn't have this the whole time. And he's like, so he's like, it's like this double-edged sword.
How does it look? That's the most important.
I had a double-edged sword. Like,
Yeah,
is that a
right.
double entendre?
But
All
yeah,
right.
I mean, so but you can like tie weights to your dick to like grow it longer because it's pretty elastic.
Okay,
Yeah,
guys.
I'm good on that. No thanks.
Guys, I think that we should probably be ending the stream because
We're at 3 hours here.
we usually don't even do them for 3 hours anymore. We usually it's more like 2, maybe 2:15. So we're actually significantly over. So yeah, thanks for my guests coming on. And I wanna talk to you guys after, so don't just leave. So yeah, and thanks for the chat as always. I appreciate it, and am working on new content soon. I'm starting to get back into the swing of regularly making videos. So yes.
Dude, that video that you were talking about, like the voice acting, it's like, are you looking
We're
for
gonna
me?
talk. We're gonna talk
Oh,
about that when
okay.
we're off air. Say
All right,
bye.
sorry.
That's Empire shit.
Empire shit. All right. Well, thank you guys. It's great chatting again.
All right.
Yeah, I had fun. It was fun.
Right,
It was.
cool.
I had a good time, and dip me in shit, roll me in breadcrumbs, and rape my butt until the room stinks.
Good. Well, send us a picture of that 11 inches. All right. We'll talk to you guys off air, right?
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
All right, stay black.